Nika, all the folks that are tuned to the Nation Station, those of you all are viewing already on Facebook, just click on to Facebook, and those of you all on YouTube. Tonight we're going to have a special program, one where we're going to deal with a man that so many of us Dominicans love at the latter end of his life, not necessarily at the beginning of his life. I can tell you, sometimes, life is so funny that people tend to love you when your life is almost at end. Good evening to you, my brother.
Well, there are two dimensions of life, Two dimensions. So, man transform, as we go, as we get older, there's transformation, So you have to depend on which side you're on at what time. It's very important.
Which side you are on and at what time
of your
That's
life.
Not fair to life. That's someone with a vision, someone who has shown some grace in the political spheres, in the political world, not just the Caribbean, Canada, Africa, to include Angola, to include Libya, to include Egypt, to include South Africa, to include Mozambique, you know what I'm saying? The Caribbean, Nicaragua, Cuba, Jamaica. I mean, we can name them. Central and South America, Venezuela, Guyana. The man was bigger than politics in the region.
But remember, I'm telling you that children have their own way of life. I mean, doesn't matter. Look at that. You have the king, King Charles, right? He's now King Charles. He have two sons. One decide to go one way, and the other one decide to go that way. Maybe at some point in time in their life. Who knows what happened to the next one?
But when you talk about the king's sons, you are seeing that they're getting prominence. They are getting prominence. So I don't think it's a fair assessment to even talk about them, because they're getting the necessary popularity that they require.
Right, but one of the sons of the man we're going to talk about, and he's here in studio. He's a prominent guy. He's made prominence, The man is a highly prominent fellow, highly controversial, but highly prominent. People know the name. And
I'm going to speak to him before I even start talking about his father. But I must say to you, Brain, that tonight you realize how I'm dressed, right?
I noticed you. What? That's the Cuban. That's the Cuban. That's the Cuban thing, man. You're in revolution, man. At one time, I thought it was from Vietnam, because Vietnam has the stars. Well, I'm talking about at the time North Vietnam, and it's one Vietnam, North and South has been united.
Well, if you look,
or China, or Red China.
If you look at my top, my jersey, right? My
Che Guevara.
Che, right? And you realize that Che himself has the heart with the star.
Right.
Liberation.
Right. But you must remember
socialism.
Right. You must remember that Che himself came from Bolivia,
I know that.
And also your Fidel.
And he fought with Fidel to ensure that they would take over from Batista.
Right.
In 59.
Right. But they had their stresses between the two of them.
But in what world would you not find two people living together, husband and wives are living together, and yet still they're having stress?
Right, because remember, Che himself was one who wanted to liberate the whole of South America. Right.
Che was not an excited guy about power.
Yeah.
He did not want any leadership power. What he wanted was the liberation of people.
Right.
So he started really from that of Central America into Cuba then.
Right.
Moved away from Central America, then went into Cuba. So we can say he was really fighting for Latin America.
Right, Latin America.
Yes.
Right. But that struggle always, and he would say the struggle continues. The struggle continues. Well, anyways, very interesting week so far. Very interesting, but time is of an essence, so we can probably move straight into what you would like to do tonight.
Well, you're right. I just want to say, first of all, let's say good evening to our friend, our comrade. Good evening to you, Tiyani, Behanzin.
Hi, good evening, Cecil, and obviously the brain himself. To your listeners who are listening via terrestrial link, as well as those listening via social media. Good evening. Pleasure to be here on a very auspicious occasion and for an important commemorative activity.
Okay,
Thank you.
let's take something from your brother, Cabral. I think he sent us some information that he wanted to ensure that we as listeners would be able to hear. Unfortunately, we won't be able to see him. So let's hear this from Cabral.
Good afternoon. This is Cabral Douglas. I just want to say a special good evening to the panelists, Cecil Joseph, the brain, and of course my brother Tiyani. I just wanted to make a brief contribution to this enlightening discussion. My best recollection is of my dad, Rosie Douglas, is when he was imprisoned actually in Montreal. He served a 2-year sentence for his involvement in the infamous computer center riot. And it's important to understand the context in which those students took a stand against racism, against imperialism, against exploitation. By 1960, you had several African countries seeking their independence, starting with Ghana under Kwame Nkrumah in 1958. You also had the formation of the West Indian Federation, although in subsequent years, due to the withdrawal of Jamaica and Trinidad, its sustainability couldn't be maintained and it collapsed. But it gave rise to the idea of independent black republics, and it set the stage for a new psychological empowerment of black people, and this obviously coincided with the civil rights movement in the United States led by Martin Luther King. Also, you had the Black Power movement, which gave rise to personalities like Stokely Carmichael, who incidentally was in Dominica campaigning for Rosie in the 80s. And you had an aura, if you will, of agitation taking place in the black community, people wanting change, people wanting individual rights, and Rosie Douglas was part of that generation of intellectual Caribbean people who came to Canada. They formed the Caribbean Conference Committee, which involved people like Ann Cools, who went on to become Canada's longest-serving senator and the first black woman senator in all of North America. You had people like Franklin Harvey, for example, who was part of the committee. He wrote the New Jewel Movement Manifesto, which eventually culminated into the Grenadian Revolution. You had people like Alfie Roberts, the famous Vincentian cricketer, who was a mastermind political organizer. You had people like Rosie Douglas and people like Walter Rodney, for example, who came to Canada as part of the Black Writers Conference, which took place in 1968, which precipitated the famous computer center incident. So all of these intellectuals were laying the foundation for radical change within the black community. And of course, Rosie Douglas was the organizer as part of the Caribbean Conference Committee of that conference, which is still one of the leading, most important conferences that took place in North America, which was a gathering of all of the leading black intellectuals, not only in North America, but from around the world. People like C.L.R. James, people like Stokely Carmichael, and people like even Angela Davis came down at one point, people like Bobby Seale from the Black Panther Party. And so my recollections of Rosie was, as a child, my mother would take me to Leclerc Penitentiary every Sunday afternoon. We would drive down. It was a special occasion. We would go visit Rosie in jail. And that was my reality. That became the norm, I struggled early trying to understand why I had to visit my father in jail and I couldn't have access to him like all of my friends in the community. And my mother tried her best to explain and to, reassure me that he wasn't there as a criminal, he wasn't there as a thief, he wasn't there as a robber, but he was there as a political prisoner who stood up for black people, So I always wore it as a badge of honor. I would go back to school and tell my friends I just came from jail yesterday. That would be on Monday morning, and I would always make sure to pick up the jail stones in the courtyard and put them in a Ziploc plastic bag and start handing them out to my kindergarten friends. And I would tell them that these are real jail stones, So those are my early recollections. Eventually, of course, he was deported. Contrary to popular belief, he wasn't deported directly to Dominica because the government of Patrick John at the time was anti-black power, if you will. Although he was a socialist, he was anti-black power. So he had actually promised to arrest Rosie upon arrival, and negotiations took place to send Rosie to Jamaica under Michael Manley, who was also a leftist politician at the time. And so my mother and I, we traveled to Jamaica upon his deportation, because my mother is a Jamaican woman. So we went to Jamaica, and that's where we met Rosie en route to Dominica and enjoyed some family time. And it was the height of the struggle in those days. And I just want to tell everybody that I've taken on the opportunity for this 25th anniversary to pen the autobiography. It's an intimate look at the journey of Rosie Douglas from Canadian prisoner, exiled, humiliated, deported in leg irons, only to reemerge as the Prime Minister of Dominica. And I want to give a special shout out to my publisher, Southern House Books, a major Canadian publisher. They intend to release the book sometime next year. And it's an interesting story about the book and its inspiration. I was actually in Montreal for Christmas with my mother, and one night after dinner, she actually put a box on the table and told me to look inside. And I looked inside, and she had all the letters that she received from Rosie when he was in prison. And I just was so fascinated and emotional that very night I went on my laptop and I started writing. And eventually I presented it to some major publishers in Canada, and Southern House signed an agreement to publish the work. So I'm very happy to announce that, and I look forward to sharing that work with Dominicans and the people of the Caribbean, as well as the people of Canada and other parts of the world. So I want to thank the Prime Minister, Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, the Labour Party, for marking this occasion in the way that they have. I look forward to listening to Ralph Gonzalez and other speakers on the 9th. That should be a tremendous occasion, and we look forward to continuing to honor the late Prime Minister and also continuing to have this lecture on an annual basis where we can enlighten our people and we can educate our people and we can share in our historical heritage within Dominica, within the Labour Party, and continue to build that solid foundation as we look into the future for the next 25 years and the progress that will unfold over that period. So this is Cabral Douglas, and I'm listening, and thank you very much, and bye for now.
Thank you so very much, Cabral. And I have with me the brother of Cabral, Behanzin.
Yes.
First of all, before we go deep into our discussion, I would like to know your birth name.
Well, I mean, RBD, my father's father, had Mike and Rosie. I mean, he had a number of children, but those two had their first sons named after their father. So my name was Robert Bernard Douglas, and my Mike's first son was Robert Brian Douglas. They used to call us in short when we were in the same place, Robert for Mike and Robert for Rosie. So that's my name. But my time in Canada, 'cause remember I was born in Montreal, raised in Dominica, from the time I was just a few months old, and returning to Canada for purposes of school and so on. My engagement with the society was difficult in that you're a minority living within a larger cultural group of people who may not necessarily have the same understanding, the same culture, the same level of just about everything as you would, and I felt that it was important for me to distinguish myself. I didn't think I felt like a Robert Douglas in Canada. I began to research and look at the issues of self, and understanding. I remember my first contact was a book from a group of people from Trinidad, NJAM, and they began to look at Black history, things like Yusuf Ben Akhanan, Theophilo Benga, and these writers, Hilliard, the Four Seasons and those things. And I began to build a base of knowledge about African history, African people, people from the Caribbean, because we call ourselves West Indies, but really that is just Christopher Columbus, well lost, thought he was moving in east of India, and so on. So he named it that, but really that was not our place. It has become a badge in terms of our identity, but really it's somebody traveling in the seas and is lost. So that's not us. We come from Africa. Our base, our knowledge, our history is African, and I pursued my studies in that selfly. I remember by the time I left on a scholarship to do a master's degree in law at the University of Nottingham, I had the biggest treasure I had was this huge case of books. I had probably maybe $20,000 worth of books, and that's what I carried with me when I arrived in Nottingham. And at that point there, I went straight up to where the Douglases were in Scotland. I remember, I just wanted to see where these people lived, and the Douglas history is an interesting one, because the Douglases are actually a group of actually dark-skinned people. So when you look at the history of Douglases, they were quite a formidable, group of people in Scotland. The name is a kind of a displant, because we originally come from deep in West Africa. The groups that were brought here on the various slave shipments. I had to go back to that base, and I didn't think it was fitting to call myself Robert Bernard Douglas. So Kwame Ture, who was my father's good friend in the 60s, worked with people like Angela Davis, registered the black voters in the South, with Martin Luther King. He basically, I met him in Tripoli in one of these celebrations, and he gave me the name to trace back, which was Behanzin Hosebewele. And he gave me the name Behanzin. So I chose that name after doing the genealogy of the name. I remember I completed that research in London in I think it was October 19, when was that? Yeah, I think that was just as I had arrived to do my master's. And I remember stepping out of my little part-time job I had to finance my education in London. And I went to this first group of solicitors. They told me, it's going to cost £600. I said, okay. I went to the next one, and they said, 400 and something. I said, I just walked two doors, and the price went down, So I went to the third and then the fourth. And this African woman said to me, Memuna, she said to me, I can do you 5 copies for £25. I said, I can change my name for £5. Okay, good. So I changed my name, and I then went back to the Canadian Embassy, got my passport in my Tiyani Behanzin name, and then I registered in the school and changed everything to Tiyani Behanzin. And when you change your name, you take an oath that you will not call or refer to yourself as the old name. So since then, I have not referred to that name. And that's where it comes from. And the name means, it comes from a very interesting kind of a mix, because Tiyani comes from an Abele word in Zimbabwe, which means someone who carries out what he sets out to. Ipiana is the derivative of the Eboe language, coming from the Yoruba language. It means grace or graceful. And Behanzin was the king shark. He was the warrior. So it's a determined, graceful warrior. Is the meaning of my name, and I've stuck with it. I think it represents who I am and what I have become, and therefore it's a more accurate reflection of Robert Bernard Douglas. Although there is this link with my grandfather, and obviously the genes are there. My daughters have the same bone structure as my father, the fingers, the bent finger, and all the attributes I have. My youngest daughter, Safia Masiba Rosie Behanzin, is a carbon copy of Rosie. It's frightening. She has the ability the social skill to connect with people, and she has a lot of his attributes, a lot of his mannerisms. I mean, I remember lying taking a nap on the couch after going to the gym, I think it was, and she stood in the doorway, and then there was like a kind of a shadow that reflected up, and when I saw her, I jumped because it just reminded me of Rosie, and I was thinking, what was he doing there? And it was just something. So she reminds me of him a lot by what she does. The older one, Iola Ayana Behanzin, looks more like the Douglases. She's darker, have the same cheeks, the face, the bone structure and everything. Looks just like the Douglases. It's just fascinating that he has returned among my family, among my children. All of what he is and what he has been to us is reflected in the two children I have. So I'm very grateful that the ancestors were able to return parts of my father among my children. So that's the name.
I try to wonder, Behanzin, knowing that you came from a family that is well known, and you would have to transfer or to change your name. How did the family accept that change?
Well, they didn't. They were pretty upset. I mean, I think Rosie himself said, when I was at Nottingham University doing my LLM, my master's degree in law, I had about 4 conferences up there. And one of them was a conference with Rosie. I had Farrakhan's people there. I think Farrakhan's son was there. Akbar Mohammed was there. The former leader of Algeria. A number of top people were there, and people from the Caribbean. I remember he announced it there, and I said to him, incidentally, after I introduced him, I said, incidentally, he's my father. And he says, no, accidentally. Typical Rosie and his jokes, But the family were not very pleased with that at all. My mother took it, and my mother was very, she was just fascinated, as to how I got this name and so on. My mother and I are very, very close. And if she is not well or not feeling well, I feel it. I don't sleep. I cannot sleep. And I call my sisters in the house, and my sister, oh, Mommy's okay. I said, no, let me speak to her. And she would tell me of something she has. I would have a dream about her driving. I would tell her, okay, you're not driving for the next couple of days. I don't think you should drive. And I had these premonitions and things like that. So we have a very closeness like that. But the name is not something that they accepted straight away. And I think I said to him, look, at the end of the day, people will call you, your name based on what you represent, how you represent yourself. So I figured that, in the end, people would eventually acknowledge the name. And I think most Dominicans know me as Tiyani Behanzin now, initially, yes, it might have been tough when Rosie died. I think they were like, what name is that Mr. coming there with, the usual thing. But I think most people see it as a unique name. I think, in fact, there are about 3 people named after me when I came here. So that was nice. They're now probably in their early teens now. So that was nice. There's a couple Tiyanis. So
how many of you all Rosie has?
Well, the thing is this. Rosie has myself. He has 3 sons that we all know. Myself, Kim, Cabral. However, there was a 3rd son discovered last year.
Last year?
Yeah, last year because of the genetic, these things take time, yeah? Mm-hmm. And then also, there is somebody I know.
Where is that son, in Dominica?
No, he's somewhere in the U.S. He's in the U.S.
For Dominican mother?
No, Jamaican mother.
So,
So he has
how
two
many
Jamaican
Jamaicans?
mothers. He had a thing for Jamaica, it looks like. And then we also have a sister who is based somewhere in Martinique. Could be in France. Cannot find her. She's probably in her 40s, early 40s. I'm not sure where she is, but I had been in contact with her, and I lost the number. I remember once in France, I had made arrangements to meet up when I got back to Guadeloupe. And then a couple of last year, I think it was, I found the actual note that I had written her details when Rosie died, because I didn't attend the burial at Hampstead because I thought that Rosie had left clear instruction that he wanted to be buried among the people.
Yes, I remember
so I
that.
didn't. So I had a controversy in that, and I didn't want to attend it. I didn't think that a revolutionary should be buried on a plantation. And I thought that because he left instructions, and he was a man that made no demands of anybody, and therefore, if he made that little wish, we should have respected that. So I didn't go, and I stayed in the house, and I said, anybody who say they have a child for Rosie, bring them, let me see. So that woman showed up, and then introduced me to her. I took her name down and note down. But given a Rosie that was traveling around the world, I suspect there might be others out there. So I'm pretty sure there must be others out there. I suspect there are others out there. So it would be six of us. But the ones that the people know are myself, Kim, Cabral, and then Debbie. That's who they are.
Kim is in Taiwan, right?
Yeah, in Taiwan. But my father also has an adopted sister who I consider to be my sister because he introduced me as that. So I consider Shanika my adopted sister. And I have good relations with her. In fact, I had her up in England at one point with her daughter. Her daughter is one of the Cuban candidates studying medicine. Very, very smart child. She should finish shortly. So it would be seven of us that came from him that we know of. If there are others, we welcome them to make themselves known.
I'm sure the sister of yours in Guadeloupe that you make mention of, or it might be in France, Dominican parent?
Yes, her mother is Dominican. So I think at the time, because of the, given the people's sentiments at the time of people not being married and maybe having children and those kinds of things pushed the mother to have her adopted, and so she's out of our grasp in a sense, but we've been trying to get her in. I hope at some point. I mean, I've spent all kinds of resources trying to track her down.
What's her name? What's her name? I'm sure that if you give her name, that program tonight can help.
I don't want to do it here because I
Okay.
don't know what that could cause. But I mean, those who know I have been tracking her down know her. So we hope that she will be reunited with us at some point.
Okay. Now we are here to speak about the life of a great man, Rosie Douglas. You said that you were born in Canada.
Yeah, Montreal.
And your dad at the time, what do you remember in your early life about your dad before getting to jail?
Well, I did not remember. I was here in Dominica from about about 11 months old, and I have been here ever since. And then I only left to go to school back in Canada, and then got scholarships from the Rotary International to do a master's degree in law at Nottingham University. I then went on to do I did a research. I was completing a research degree towards a doctorate in law. I then left that and decided to do actual practical law degree, so I can qualify to actually practice law. Got scholarships from Montreal, got scholarship from the Rotary International. Then I did some social work certification so I could do practice teaching. That way I can actually assist those who are pursuing bachelor's and master's degree in social work. And in England, you need to go through this process of validation through a placement. So I'm one of those people that can assess that. And I probably have learned more in terms of my work as a magistrate from the social work thing, because I did lots of work with people with mental health, people with other challenges, homeless young people, drug abuse, people with issues of violence and those kinds of things. So I learned a lot from the my social work certifications and qualifications. For me, the issue with Rosie, I wasn't raised with Rosie like a traditional mother and father household. Rosie was somebody who belonged to the people. Rosie spent all his time in his politics, and you would just hear him now and again. And most of the time it would be engagement in some kind of joke. He'll call you at 2 a.m, pretend to be an old lady in Benz or something. And then, you're completely enthralled with this person is talking to you at 2, and then he goes, I get you. So that kind of thing. So it wasn't, and the thing about Rosie, we were not allowed to call him Rosie, Daddy. We had to call him Rosie. And he said, well, if you call me Daddy and I'm in the wrong setting, it might be an issue, and I want you to be able to talk to me and correct me if you disagree with me and that sort of thing. So we called him Rosie, referred to him as Rosie, and we engaged him. I would say, Rosie, come on, that's ridiculous. And you could then say to him that whatever he's doing is right. I remember Rosie came and he would tell us some political things, and I'd go, oh, please, that's rubbish. I just can't see how that's going on. And most people would not be able to say those things to their father if they say, oh, Daddy this and Daddy that. So for Rosie, it was Rosie. You call him Rosie, and you spoke to him as a political comrade, and you engage with him in that way. You're able to tell him whatever you wanted. And put your point. The Douglas family is a family where during holidays and times that we had together, you were debating your elders, you were debating those around your age, and you were disciplining those who were younger than you. So it's a very challenging and kind of environment, because you have so many people there in the house. Everyone gets up to pray at 4 a.m. You brush if you don't brush your teeth, you shake water out of your mouth, and then you file into the room. My grandmother pulls out this long rosary and she starts praying, and everybody used to come there. Even like Mike used to be in the house, so Mike had to come there with his wife, his children in the room. Everybody sat down on the beds, and my grandmother started, and then when you finish that, you then run and get your shoes to polish your shoes and get ready for your shirt is done, your pants is done, and then you worry about your somebody older than you checks your homework. You check the homework of those younger than you, and then you prepare for your breakfast, and then you prepare for school and those sorts of things. So it was a regimented kind of environment. We woke early. To this day I still wake up at 4:45. If I don't have anything to do, I wake up at 4:45. But normally my day starts at 3:40. So by 4 o'clock I'm engaged in some serious work. And even now, if I have court, I hardly sleep. I cannot sleep. If I have court the next day, I don't sleep. I walk up and down, figuring, well, the other person must be sleeping, so there must be something I could read, so I could be able to get a little more information on that person when I face them in the morning. So we have this regimented way that we were raised, and that is reflected in the way we live. The waking up early, the praying, the hour of reflection, the preparation, and those things were part of it. So the family had a difficulty with my name changing, but they were supportive, because they're supportive of very much individuals. It's a huge family, and just about everybody is known for something. We all have some skill in some area. So if you're not good at this, then they know what you're good at, and they would engage you in those ways. So it's an interesting experience, because it's not a small little family.
What Debbie is good at? Well,
Debbie is actually Debbie did a law degree. I mean, first she'll call it and say what she's good at. But Debbie is a person who she's like a little politician, similar to Rosie. Debbie is very intelligent. Debbie is a person who is very, very focused, and does not really suffer fools. If you do something to her and she's not accepting it, she's going to respond to you. But she is somebody that has, like all of us, have carried a lot about this man. I mean, Rosie was a huge shadow to live under, and we were not really allowed to just exist as ordinary people because the society expected more from us. In Canada, I was involved in anti-apartheid movement. I was involved in blocking and whenever they hurt, kill, or injure black people, I used to demonstrate. I used to occupy buildings. Almost we walk into the police station and demand that we're going to demonstrate. We're not asking permission and those kind of things. I wasn't playing with anybody. Once you touch a black person, my friend T, and he was on your door, and people used to call me and tell me things about what's going on at work. I used to have demonstrations outside the workplace, petitions, and I wasn't having it, and I continued to have that here. And we like, I guess, like Debbie as well, Debbie, Cabral, everyone. Although Cabral was an athlete, and Cabral showed promise from the time he was 7, 8 as an athlete, but slowly the society expects you to be a person of a source of resistance, a source of human rights, a source of fighting for people's rights. I mean, Rosie was like that, and it revolved and was seeped into us. So Debbie's like that. She's certainly like that.
Rosie himself was an athlete.
Yeah, Rosie's an athlete, although I think his cricket skill was more poke kind of cricket, so he can extend the game so a real player on the other side can hit the ball. I don't think but he was good basketball. He was a good ball player. He was a good basketball player.
If Rosie still listen to you now, Rosie will definitely flog you.
I don't know. I think the guy was just poking, Gassam. It's almost what he was doing. He was poking until somebody of skill on the other side would hit the ball so they could make some runs. Right. That's what he was doing mostly. I accept his ball skills. He was a pretty good ball player. He had the height and everything, just like Cabral. Cabral was, I used to go all of Cabral's games, Cabral at 9 and 10 and 11. Cabral was playing with people much older than him, and he was outscoring all of them. So I used to take lots of pride in that sort of thing. So Cabral excelled in the sports. I excelled at school. I was the student president. I ran the student government. I ran the legal judicial committee for the school. I attended disputes when students had with the university. I had a number of very radical groups when I was president. I financed them. I financed the Palestinians. I financed the Arab students. I financed and assisted the Jewish students as well. But they were opposed, obviously, to the Palestinian students. I remember I received an honorary kofia from the PLO out of their mission in Ottawa. I remember raising funds for SWAPO. I raised funds for soldiers in South Africa fighting the South African government. I raised funds for Mozambique resistance fighters. I raised funds for Zimbabwe fighters in Rhodesia against Ian Smith. At a young age, I was writing some radical stuff when I was 16, 17 for the student government in Champlain Regional College, where I was the managing director of the newspaper. We did two bi-monthly copies of a newspaper. When I got to Concordia University, I was the chair of the Publication Society. I even received an award, social activist award. So I was very active. I wasn't, I didn't just go to school.
What Kim was good at?
Well, Kim left here, and he basically, I guess Rosie's foresight of what was going to happen in that region. Kim was placed in Taiwan studying, so he first did computer sciences, and then he did political science. Kim is a kind of a person that is known in Taiwan. If he comes out of an establishment, people will shout and scream when they see him because he's engaged in cultural things. He has probably done a lot more to raise the brand of the Caribbean and Africa in Taiwan. He had a music group that they were going around playing, and culturally he has made quite a bit of an impact in there. He now has, obviously married over the last number of years. He just has a son. The son is just over a year now, and he is focusing on his son. His wife works for one of the airlines, so they travel a lot. Kim has probably traveled almost as much as Rosie. So they are very talented, and in social media he's really amazing on that. His photography, his editing, very similar to my younger daughter Sophia. Sophia goes by the name of Sophia Rosie, because her name is Sophia Masiba Rosie Behanzin. She just shortens it to Sophia Rosie. She has something like 90,000 plus followers on social media. She did this. I think it's called 72 Questions on YouTube. Sophia Rosie. She's incredible. I mean, and she works trying to stream events in Dominica. She wants to create a legacy group of young people between 18 to 30 who will come to the festival, who will come and engage in our activities here in the Caribbean to boost tourism figures. That's what she's interested in doing. And right now she's got a distinction and a first class in her software engineering and development at the university. She received a scholarship from one of the financial institutions to do that. So she's amazing in terms of her editing and computers. I have problems with my computer. She sorts it out for me. When she was here, when she comes in holiday, she sits on the beach in Mero or St. Joseph with her little slippers, and she's fixing major complex issues on the network at the bank. This bank is a major bank in terms of in the financial district in the UK, because you have the political district, you have the financial district, and she's the one controlling and assisting and protecting the bank's infrastructure in terms of credit cards and anything like that. She fixes it. So she has that part of it. But then you see this really nice, quiet kind of person. I mean, she went to Brazil a couple of months ago, and her videos of Brazil is better than what the tourism group have produced. So she's engaged in that, and companies like Samsung ask her to review computers and tablets and things like that. So she and Kim have the same kind of similar thing with social media.
So let me ask now: your daddy did you ever heard someone made mention that Rosie Douglas was going to get married or was married?
Well, Rosie, first of all, it would be madness for any woman to go and marry Rosie. That would just be crazy. That's like marrying the whole of Dominica. Or the whole of the Caribbean, the whole of Africa. That's the only thing. But yes, there was talk of that. And I remember the members of parliament gave him a shock when a woman that he was supposed to be had this connection with was no longer available because she was marrying somebody else. But yes, there was talk of that. But Rosie was not. It would have been insane for anybody to say they would accept Rosie as a husband. I just can't see how it would have worked. Because Rosie was in love with people. He was in love with his politics. That's it. That's always was interested. And if a woman had to be with Rosie, that woman had to have been a very special person who would put up with that man. I mean, I know Cabral's mother put up with him. I know my mom put up with him. And Kim's mom and, the other children that he has. But I couldn't see a woman being prepared to marry a man so engaged with everything else. That was the thing with it.
Would you say that he loved women?
Of course. I mean, Rosie. I remember when I think it was somebody in the Labour Party in England had made something about the rights in relation to gay marriage or something, and then Edison decided to have some big long speech, interrupt the day, and start this long story. And Rosie said, "I not in man business. I'm in woman business." And he just looked pretty silly, because Edison always had this kind of a big square glasses, and he thought, well, maybe if he carried books, he'd look intelligent and so on. And Rosie just came with a smile. Rosie would knock you clean with a smile. That was Rosie, man. He was just, So he said, I not in man business. Why you disrupting regular program to go and talk about your foolishness about this nonsense? You know what I'm saying? Woman I like. So Rosie was a woman's man for sure.
Now let's talk about Rosie and his political life. He started in Canada fighting for the blacks in Canada, the immigrants in Canada, to help to liberate the people that were depressed by the system of Canada. At that time it was what's the guy name again? The son just resigned.
Justin Trudeau.
Trudeau.
Yes.
Yes.
Trudeau. And but what before Rosie got to Canada, Rosie basically applied for school to do some agricultural program, and he didn't get an answer. So Rosie decided to call the Prime Minister of Canada. And in those days you call the exchange, and the exchange make the phone call, then you have to wait all that long story. So people think, but you would call the Prime Minister? Rosie said, yeah, I mean, I can't get in to talk to the man. So few days later, Diefenbaker calls Rosie. And when Rosie eventually gets to Canada, he's picked up by Foreign Affairs. Rosie's picked up by Foreign Affairs, like this real protocol thing, when he arrives in thing. And then Rosie continues engaging with Diefenbaker till he became the leader of the conservative students at Concordia and not Concordia, at McGill. That was Rosie, and he continued to engage. And when even when in the dark days when Diefenbaker passed, he left instructions for his wife to invite Rosie to the funeral. So it was this guy just comes out of the Caribbean, and he was batting above his weight, and he continued to do that. And Rosie used to spend time trying to invent ways to get rich Canadians to pay for the education of people who came to pick apples on fields in Canada. That's what the man was doing. Rosie has always had some scheme to try to transfer resources from the very wealthy to the very distraught. That's what the man was good at. And very good at trying to organize and make peace. Rosie was involved in Iraq war. Rosie was involved in the fighting between the English and the Irish. Rosie was involved in trying to make peace. Rosie was in fact, when Rosie spoke at conferences in Ireland, Rosie got more standing ovations than the leadership themselves, people like Jerry Adams and Martin McInnes. Rosie got more standing ovations from them. Rosie was a link between the Mataba and the assistance that the Irish received to fight the British. Rosie was in Angola. Rosie was in Mozambique. Rosie, when the Cuban forces beat the South African forces in Peter Paul Naval, Rosie was in there. Rosie was an intricate part in ensuring that resources that came from the Russians to the Cubans were deployed against racist South Africans, capturing their forces and beating them, leading to the freedom of Mozambique, leading to the freedom of Angola, leading to the freedom of all of Southern Africa. Rosie was, we see Rosie, a little fella from Portsmouth and so on. We never took him to those points. We never understood the importance of Rosie. And in most cases, nobody really understood what Rosie was about. They just saw him as, this guy from Dominica. But Rosie was a very, very powerful person. And it's for that and those reasons why I've always been very careful in terms of his safety, his security, and a lot. And Rosie couldn't be bothered. I mean, Rosie didn't take the time that he should have taken with his security at all. It was like, the guy was just not having any of it. No matter what you tell him, he just wasn't having any of it. I would take all this extra precautions, and Rosie would just blow it away with some things. I remember just speaking to him and the way he was about things. Rosie just didn't care. I mean, when I went to pick up Rosie once in Canada, they said, "Oh, he's a risk to national security," and blah blah blah. Rosie shows up at the airport and he runs off the plane in a tracksuit. So they're looking for this. They were going to detain him for some reason, and they detained this other man, a black man with a suit, and they said that must be Rosie Douglas. He was tall and big as well, Meanwhile, I had picked up Rosie and we're already on our way to Montreal, to the center of Montreal, So he was a completely different, unorthodox character, and because of the fact that his closest friend or guy, appearing to be a friend, was actually a U.S. CIA spy sent to the Canadian Secret Service to work to collect information on Rosie and to try to get Rosie. At one point, they were trying to get Rosie to actually get involved in a murder scheme to kill a professor, and then they would then take him out of completely and just have him jailed for life or something like that. They tried that, but Rosie was not a person that was involved in no violence. And because of that, the spy told them, well, this is the most peaceful community he has seen. So the entire thing collapsed. You understand? But even then, the Americans will really forget, and some of those people don't really forget. Because when Rosie came to Dominica, there were several Dominicans, and that's something that we need to deal with in this history of ours here. There were several Dominicans that worked, supported and financed by the CIA to ensure that Rosie was kept in his place. In fact, because Rosie is very radical, Rosie was not really prepared for, electoral politics of the Labour Party, any of those political parties. Rosie was a revolutionary, hardened by his times in Canada, links with the Chinese. Before Rosie came here, Rosie had how many decades of links to the Chinese? So all of what we received in terms of benefits and links with
as a matter of fact, as you're saying that, actually, as you mentioned the Chinese, I remembered when talk of the international airport was in 1997, Rosie Douglas was very vocal on requesting the government at the time to speak to the Chinese to help in the development and building of the international airport.
Exactly. I mean, the first plan Rosie had with the Chinese was an airport. And in fact, the time that Rosie died, that plan was in his briefcase and his suitcase. In fact, when Rosie passed, we were shocked because I felt that Rosie was going to die within 3 months. I had premonitions, and I couldn't sleep sometimes. And I remember when I had enough of it, I tried to speak to him. I tried to speak to Nathan. You can ask Nathan. Nathan is one of, without Nathan, Rosie would not have been able to do what he did in Paybush and those areas. Because Nathan was central to Rosie moving around, Rosie having a presence. Even when he was not in the country, you can see Nathan with the transport moving around, doing and carrying on work for Rosie. So Nathan was crucial to that. But a lot of the time when Rosie moved, he was not even in Dominica. Some of the things he got done here, he wasn't in Dominica at the time. So he had a lot of people working and assisting him in that way. That was part of the issues with him,
No, Rosie, as we're going to talk to Rosie, the politician, a lot of work was done with Rosie and the PLO leaders, especially that of
Yasser Arafat.
Yasser Arafat.
Yeah.
They were very close.
Yeah, well, when at an online conference just after the first storm, Yasser Arafat, in speaking to Rosie, he stood and he pledged $900,000 US.
That's 1979.
Yeah, he pledged $900,000 US. And as soon as he sat, all of the other Arab countries stood and raised something like $13 million US. After the storm, Eugenia did not want to accept the money and went on this ridiculous tirade and did not want to take the money. But this was the importance of people like Yasser Arafat. And even in Arafat's death, I mean, they dug him up years later and did tests on the body to see what was the actual cause of death. When Rosie died, I was, first of all, after me telling him what I thought was going to happen, it happened exactly as I saw it. I warned my brothers, I prepared my brothers, I told them, go home, because Cabral was going back to Toronto. Kim was staying in Taiwan, and I told him, prepare for his death, because I cannot see any way of avoiding this. It looks like we're walking down this tunnel. It's like when Mike was sick, and Mike had cancer, and we all knew they tried everything to find out what was going on. At one point, Mike accepted that he would pass, and he kept on saying, it's taking so long to die, and why is it taking so long, and those kind of things, because his mind was sharp, but his body began to just break down, and Mike did not want to stick around. He had a weapon. He gave it to one of his brothers, I wouldn't say who, to hand it to the police so that he doesn't, if the pain gets too much, that he takes the gun and do something about it. So the gun was handed out. That gun, while I was a magistrate, was picked up in the hands in some drug matter. That's how crazy it is. It was in the armory, but somehow some crooked officers got it sold on the streets, and that was something that is really within the material possession of Mike's estate. But that said, the issue that we had with Rosie was that he was not a person that was orthodox. I remember picking up Rosie at the airport once. Myself, and I remember whether Sean was with me or my brother was with me. We end up stopping at this woman's house in Paybush. Rosie goes into the house at about 8 o'clock, and then the man is sleeping with his wife. Rosie tells the man to push over, and he lies down there. He takes off his shoes, he lies down there, and he's talking to them. And he tells us, well, go and join the younger people in the dining room. Everybody was sleeping on the floor and on the couch and so on. So we sat there, and jokes started about 8:30. Jokes started. We had kako and so on. And 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, jokes, my friend. After about 2, 3 o'clock, we fell asleep, woke up very early in the morning, and then they gave us some breakfast. And then as we break the corner, the man said, Rosie, is you that there? I hear in your voice, and you mean to tell me you didn't come and see me? So we ended up spending one night by Mr. House. So we're at airport, we come out airport. So we had to stop by the first person. We spent another night by the other person. Then we spent a third night. Then we end up in Portsmouth after 3 days or so. That's what Rosie was. Rosie stop, go in your house, go in the kitchen, go in the pot, uncover the pot, take his share, sit down there and while he's talking to you, That's what Rosie was. He was like an extension of the people. And I haven't met anybody like Rosie. And I've seen Rosie operate in Europe. I've seen Rosie operate in Puigizé, place like England. And I see Rosie penetrate, my friend, community groups in Ireland, community groups, religious groups all over Europe. And the man is completely at home. That's the thing. I mean, it was just something else. It's like he's in Mr. Portsmouth. He's in County Armagh or something like that, and he's as if he's sitting down in Portsmouth. So he had this magnetizing connection with people wherever he was, and he was not an elitist person. If you are down, he'll come down to your level and speak to you. He can speak to the kings and the queens, the most powerful of people, at the same time speak to the smallest and the most vulnerable.
While some people would have spoken ill of Robert Mugabe, but Robert Mugabe was a very good friend of Rosie Douglas. How so?
Well, the thing is that Mugabe's problem, I think, is that like most of the revolutionary people at the time, is that I think it took too long to implement the necessary changes that needed to have taken place in Zimbabwe. And because of that, he played into the hands of those who were going to accuse him of all sorts of things. I see Rosie and Castro probably have a lot in common because they come from very well-off families, essentially, above the fray, but decided to use their resources and their time to engage vulnerable people. Rosie, they used to put Rosie on the cash in his father's shop. And the amount of goods that leave the shop was never satisfied by the amount of cash in the thing, because Rosie used to give people things away. Rosie used to give all sorts of things away, things that they would be selling, he would give it away. So Rosie was those kind of people. As long as he felt that there was an imbalance, he would physically intervene to balance it. So he would give people goods when they didn't have money to actually purchase it, And that was the thing about Rosie. He just had this egalitarian spirit about him and fairness. He reminds me of the lady who raised me in St. Joseph, Auntie Con, because that's how she was. Anything that came into the house, everyone got a share of it. There was nobody that was bigger than anybody. Everybody got a share. And whatever resources in the house, everybody got equal access to it.
So help us to understand the Rosie and the Mugabe relation.
Well, let me get back to that for digressing a bit. Rosie and Mugabe came from a period where, remember, you see, Mugabe fought with Joshua Nkomo, and they continued to fight because they had ideological issues. However, when they fought Ian Smith, they were together. Rosie worked with both sides, but he was closer to Mugabe because Mugabe was a person who was far more. He wasn't just like a closed person. He had a lot of influence in the region and internationally among progressive forces. That's what Mugabe was. So he was able to muster a lot of resources for Zimbabwe, and that's what Rosie used to assist him with. I mean, right up until Rosie died, he was with him, you know. But the issue with Mugabe was he took too long to implement. So by the time he implemented, they said, he was just simply trying to survive as a leader by doing so at the time that he did. And that was where the trouble was.
I know that he also had this very good relation with Ethiopia, and knowing that Ethiopia and their whole system of consciousness, you know.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you know of Rosie and Ethiopia?
Well, I wouldn't say I know. I don't know Rosie completely, because Rosie was a very complex fella. And after the betrayal in Canada, Rosie would never place all of his tools in the hands of any one person. Rosie would tell you a piece of something. Rosie will tell somebody else a piece of something. And so he carried on. If he talked to Sean, he would get something from Sean that he may not necessarily give to me. And that's how Rosie was. So because of that, it's difficult for you to say that. But one thing about Ethiopia, Rosie felt because of the spiritual Catholicism in the Caribbean, especially in Dominica at the time, he felt that it was important for the connection he had with the Rastafarian movement in Dominica and in the region, in Jamaica and those places. It was crucial and important for him to have the links with Ethiopia. So Rosie was involved in much of the revolutionary activity that took place in Ethiopia, but not just Ethiopia, Northern Kenya, Northern Territory forces, Eritrea. Rosie was involved in all of those things. In fact, I remember I met Rosie in Tripoli once, and we were supposed to be spending just 3 days together, and then he would head down to I think he was heading to Chad, and then from Chad, he was then supposed to be trying to get some prisoners released. And Rosie had this ticket it was about almost 6 or 7 inches, and it was all just stapled, all open, Addis Ababa, Conakry, back to Ghana, then back to Uganda, and just so and all you would see on his apart from the tickets, you will see so and so prisoner, negotiation for this and this and that, and that's what. So Rosie had this huge kind of itinerary that never ended, because he would leave Dominica and end up in Africa for like a month, going back and forth trying to get some people released from Mogadishu back to Eritrea, from Eritrea back to some other country, and that's what he just kept on. That's what he was focused on. Rosie had several passports from some of these countries, and he was moving around in those countries as a diplomat.
We
in
know
most cases.
We know when we speak about Rosie Douglas, the greater part of Rosie Douglas in terms of relationship is that of Libya. How much do you know of Gaddafi and that of Rosie?
I know a lot about it, because can you imagine when there was a celebration, the 25th anniversary, 30th anniversary, the people closest, armed and guarding Gaddafi used to be Dominicans. There's a guy, and that's why when I came, I was a bit shocked. I saw people like Cuthbert. Cuthbert was a guy that was very, very disciplined. Cuthbert used to take an AK-47 apart in seconds, blindfolded, and he was a drill master, and the guy was just something else. Now he's been overcome by challenges of alcohol, so it's hard to see him, because I know what he was. I saw Cuthbert within 2 feet protecting Gaddafi. In fact, I used to joke with him. I said, listen, man, your partner under pressure was going on. You sit down there and Bosman forming the ass. And I said, sorry for the language. So I would tell him, but Cuthbert.
Who's that Cuthbert?
Cuthbert, his name, I don't remember his last name. But he's in Dodan. He lives in Dodan. It was Cuthbert. There was a guy from the Carib territory. There was Brigady, my partner from Portsmouth. He used to be mostly around with the private conveniences. He passed, unfortunately, through some illness. But there was 4 of them. And these were the people that stood as centuries protecting Gaddafi. All while the time the Americans were trying to bomb Gaddafi and bomb his home and all the rest of it. Rosie's men were the one closest to him. Rosie carried how many men from Mozambique, from South Africa, trained them in Libya, sent them back for liberation work. I a student in Nottingham in Montreal, raised funds for denim jeans because of their movements in the bush. We used to put them in jeans. We used to buy shoes, boots, and then weapons came from the Russians. Russian weapons came from the Chinese, and we were responsible for raising funds. Instead of having these silly little lectures in these universities where nothing happens, we sent actual funds to revolutionary forces inside South Africa. That's what we were doing. We were supporting anti-apartheid movements. We were supporting revolutionary movements supported by the Chinese, supported by the Russians, supported by the Cubans. Cuban black women were fighting MiG jets against the supersonic jets from the French, and we were beating them. We supported them. As students going to school and colleges, we supported this movement because we were about the liberation of black people, my friend, and we're not playing no games with anybody. So we're prepared to give our lives to train and support these people, and that's what we were doing at the time.
So what from the relationship of Muammar Gaddafi and Rosie that you think that's of great importance for us to know?
Well, I think the death of Rosie caused a lot of disjointed action, because I think Rosie worked so long with these groups, and just at the time that things were crystallizing, he had come to power. The Libyans gave him a red carpet return to Libya after he won, and they had planned. Rosie had asked them for $2 billion to transform Dominica, and I think Gaddafi would have done that, because that is what they were looking at. Rosie was the most significant of the strategic guidance of the Mataba, a world resistance center that supported movement right across the world, and Rosie was the center of that. When I went to Libya with my group of people from Canada, they identified us on the plane. And the stewardess, who were actually security men, were able to identify the people I was with. When we arrived, they treated us as if we were diplomats, but we were just young people. We were young people are recruited from different parts of Canada, and we went to get direct hand training from some of the revolutionary leaders, people like Charles Taylor, people like the Conakry, resistance movements, people from Ghana, people from Nigeria, people from all across Africa and all across Asia that were engaged in revolutionary movements. And we were taught by these people. I remember meeting the Sandinista leader. I remember meeting that. We were sitting in because the thing about Libya was a kind of a organized disorganization. You sit up there and they tell you, oh, somebody's coming to the camp at 9 o'clock. You don't see them for 2 days. Then they show up like 8 o'clock on a third day. And you're like, everybody's like, why come you guys not ready yet? You know, they expect you to be ready. But that's what it was. But the Mataba was something that is yet to be explained properly. I mean, I was there. I brought people there. I brought young leaders there. We trained with these people. We were well organized, and we assisted. Once we returned, we were organized. What used to always catch me is that in Libya, the amount of people that the regime trained to seek leadership and control and power in their collective countries was absolutely amazing. And whenever you were leaving, you would see these people talk to you, and they would tell you, you may not see me when you come back, because we have a mission to go through in say in Liberia or in Sierra Leone, and they'll tell you point blank, you might not see me when you come back. And it was if we were ashamed, because there we were going back to North America, and we were going back to England, where we were going back to. But these people were engaged in survival. They were engaged in fighting for their liberation against imperialist forces. So we felt as if inadequate. We felt inadequate. And I remember when Rosie, between Gaddafi, handed to Mandela after he came out of prison $35 million from Gaddafi, more than the money that the ANC received from the Canadian government, more than they received from any of the other governments or European governments singularly. And Rosie was right in the middle of that. Rosie was very close to Winnie Mandela, although Nelson Mandela slowly was pushed away from Winnie Mandela because they said that she was probably perhaps too radical. But Gaddafi was very central, and it was really Rosie's guidance that led a lot of the resources coming out of Tripoli into the hands of these movements. And most of these movements are still alive in some way. Not to the levels that they were at the time, but I remember people like Chris FIFO, who was the chief pallbearer when Chris Hani was killed by the National Forces in South Africa. I remember meeting these people. I had pictures with these people. I had connections with them, and they used to look out for me. I used to look out for them. When Rosie died, Charles Taylor sent somebody to meet me at one of the venues in London to give me some instructions.
I have a picture with Rosie and Nelson Mandela in Egypt. I mean, it's amazing. Rosie standing next to Nelson Mandela in Egypt. In my time, I made it my business to accumulate pictures of Rosie Douglas. So I have an album right here with me with pictures of Rosie Douglas in Egypt. And Rosie also meeting Tony Blair, leader of the British Labour Party.
Well, they gave me a card. Tony Blair signed a card, and they gave it to me personally when I was coming down here, and they gave it to me to present. But you know what was very nice at the funeral when the body was brought into the cinema owned by the family, there was a huge wreath that Castro had sent, and the lady told me it's from Castro, and she said something to me in my ears which I can't really divulge, but. That was just an amazing thing. I'm thinking, my goodness, the wreath comes. It's the biggest wreath that's there, the most prominent, and I placed it at the head, just at the foot of the casket. I placed it right there, and it remained there throughout. And then we sent it up so it could be placed on the grave. But that just because remember, Rosie was very instrumental in trying to make peace among the ideological differences that emerged in the Grenada Revolution. And because Rosie was very similar to Bishop. Bishop was a very loved person. He had this electrifying, just like Rosie did, just like this current Prime Minister have with some people. He has this natural connection with people. And that is what Bishop was like. But Bishop, in terms of the internal demographics and the internal, I would say democracy within the party, I don't think he was that much interested in it. And because of that, the others tried to use the party structure to control Bishop. But Bishop knew that he was going to be able to rely on the people. And that's what, in the end, caused the conflict. But I remember Rosie was trying his best to get Fidel Castro, to be able to settle the dispute in Grenada before it exploded onto the world where you lost the revolution and so many people passed and the whole thing was just a loss. And even right now, the Grenadians are still in a flux, have not been able to come to grips with this thing. And then obviously they banned Rosie from traveling most of the Caribbean places.
So we'll come to the Caribbean because I'm taking it one step at a time. So we are into Africa, and we know that. Also, too, while in Africa, he would have tried to bring the Africans together as one great unit together with Muammar Gaddafi.
Yes. Well, Gaddafi thought that the entire Africa should have one currency, and that currency should be based on the mineral wealth in the countries. And right away, that was going to cause problems with the West. It was going to cause problems with Europe, going to cause problems with the Americans, because they were going to lose control because most of these countries do not have the resources that Africa has. While they tell you Africa is poor and all this foolishness, Africa has a skyline that will beat some of the European capitals. I've traveled in how many countries, and I've seen it. I have been all over Europe. I have traveled with Rosie. I've traveled, without Rosie, like Kim, for example. I've traveled all over the place. So we've seen it. Africa is not the purpose that they speak of. So they wanted the currency, and it seems like the oil, pegged on gold. And they were going to disrupt any action by the African Union to be able to achieve those things. Gaddafi said, look, instead of aircraft using European flight plans, why don't we have an internal African one? So he was going to be targeted. He was going to be targeted, and Rosie felt that the resources that the Libyans have, they may not have the intellectual aptitude, but he has he will be able to put in place a strategy, and they were very successful in financing. It's just that the thing collapsed because the radical religious element among the Muslim community erupted, and then you had all of these movements under pressure until the reactionary forces in Libya actually killed Gaddafi. But I remember Gaddafi. People get married, they get a house, a car. Women studying, 80% of the engineers were women. Courses that's not available in your country, they will pay for you to go and do those courses outside. I didn't see no weapons outside the central bank in Libya. Only when you get inside, you will see guards inside the inner perimeter of the bank. All of what they talk about of Libya was complete. I saw the other side of that. That was just complete nonsense. It was our failure to explain to people and to give them a sure, clear view of what was going on inside this place. And I see black people talking a sort of nonsense about calling Gaddafi all sorts of names. When I saw the difference, I saw the other side of it. I saw inside of it. I remember traveling into an area. You're going to Tripoli. In the middle of this community, you'd pass the little street, and Gaddafi lives in the middle there. He has his tent outside, and he has this thing. The Americans bombed it. I remember going there around that time. I remember when the aircraft fell in Lakou. I remember the bombings in Germany. I remember once we were on our way to Tripoli, and I remember we got a lift from somebody who was actually an American Green Beret. And he was trying to question us. They used to videotape us as we enter on those craft. I remember going to Tripoli from Malta, and the security, the harassment, all of those things. And we were young people. And they had an eye on us. So I know the importance of what Rosie did in these countries. I know what the importance that Rosie facilitated. I understand the importance of Rosie with the Irish, the IRA, and the cultural groups inside Ireland. Rosie was essential to that.
So before, because in a while I want us to go to Europe. I just want to find out from you. We know that Egypt is bordered by Libya to the west, and Sudan to the south. Israel and the Gaza Strip is to the east. What would you think, Rosie Douglas, today would make of what is happening in Egypt, in Libya, and in Israel to a certain extent?
Well, I think the brutality of the Israelis against the Palestinians. Rosie was close to the Palestinians. Rosie was very close. Rosie was close to the PLO leader. Rosie was close, not to Hamas, because Hamas was really a religious organization, but he was close to the PLO, and felt that the PLO was the only option for a peaceful long-term solution with the Israelis. Once the Israelis themselves finance Hamas, the same Israelis that fight in Hamas finance Hamas to stop Hamas from being able. They were trying to get Hamas to replace the PLO, because it was a lot more easier for them to sell a crazy terrorist plot from those individuals as opposed to the PLO, which were political. So Rosie would have been. First of all, I knew the kind of importance. Rosie was in Iraq when the Americans began to bomb. Rosie was there. What he was doing there? He was trying to make peace. Typical Rosie. I mean, can you imagine a small little fella from Portsmouth? Well, he's a big fella physically, but from Portsmouth, is in Iraq trying to negotiate a non-aligned peace solution to stop the war in Iraq. That's Rosie. He was just someone that he was fearless, and he was selfless. While I'm there trying to reach him, and he's calling, the guy's just, he's calling me at all his weird hours, and he's making a joke. I'm dead serious, I'm worried, I'm concerned, and the man is having a laugh. That's how he was. The most difficult moment, I remember when we had just lost the election and Rosie had just lost. We got a call that very morning from Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was just leaving Nimba County with his forces and were going into the capital. And Rosie was there trying to make arrangements for resources for Charles Taylor. I remember Rosie's tried with the English to pay for the infrastructure damage and in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and those places, so he can then get the fighters to lay their arms and prepare to enter the political process. That's what Rosie was doing. The English did not accept it, but then again, the English are a group of people that have been probably the most murderous of the colonialists. The British kill 100 million Indians, between 1880, they kill, between that period and a period of 40 years, they kill 100 million Indians. I mean, that's barbaric. But we say they're civilized people. They speak nice English and they have nice clothes and all the rest of it. These people are barbaric people. Rosie's input and his time and his energy from coming such a small little country could have such an impact, not just in our region, but internationally. If it wasn't for Rosie, the peace agreement we saw in Northern Ireland with the British would not have been the same. That's why he said the peace dividends frees up £2 billion plus a year, and some of that money should come to Dominica. That's what Rosie said. He was bold enough to say that. Equally, when the Libyans said that they would create a fund to rival the funds of things like the IMF, they said, where should we put this bank? Rosie said it shouldn't be in Dominica necessarily. Dominica is a small little place. It could be in St. Lucia. It could be in Barbados. Or even a place like Trinidad. Because Rosie thought that it was not just because it's from Dominica, it should be a Dominican thing. Rosie felt that the resource that should be placed in the hands of the Caribbean by the Libyans, for example, should go to the most competent in the region to be able to make the change necessary. So Rosie was a person beyond his time. The same way when he left Canada, he basically was working in Canada. He was doing prison reform. When the Interior Minister passed through the prison, Rosie handed him a document prepared on prison reform. To this day, they said how important that document was, and they were trying to get Rosie to apologize, and then they would give him whatever it is. And Rosie said, "I'm not apologizing. I stood for black people. I'll do it again. I'll do it more effectively this time. I'm not apologizing."
But people tend to think that Rosie was a communist. But when you hear, and you're, according to you, stating that Rosie would have spoken to governments in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Iran, in Lebanon, Egypt to be particular, and even in Israel, do you really claim that Rosie Douglas was basically one that was looking for peace for the world, or he had an ideology that some people did not understand?
Before he answers that, one has to define the difference, because I always get confused between communism, socialism. Because when one talks about communism, one talks people in small island states tend to think the communists want to prevent religion, the worship. What is that? When we talk about communism and socialism, is there a difference between those two?
Well, let me just say, Rosie was not a communist. I think Rosie was a social democrat, because that's what Rosie was about. But the issue of communism, capitalism, is about market control and things, and that's what it was. But I think, but at the same time, look at Latin America. You had people like you read the book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
There was a spiritual movement among the Catholic priests. in Central America that helped and guided revolutionary favor among the Latin Americans. It was the church. It was the church. In places like China, you don't really have communism. What you have is a hybrid. You have a communist structure in name, but with all the attributes of what anybody will find in a capitalist system. No. Russia is enormously important to the world. The Russian people, the Cuban people, gave to the world a level of dignity. And because of that, we should never forget those people. We should never forget. Look at what the Cuban people have given us. When the English left, they left a poorly trained engineer, no medical support. Look at what we have received from the Cuban people, people that we say are poor. They have given us doctors, agronomists, economists. You name it, they've given it to us for free. People who are doctors now, some of them, their families could not have afforded to send them to school to get these medical degrees, yet the Cubans have given it to us for free. The Cuban people, the Russians have made it possible for the Cubans to have resources and make those resources available to much of the fighting African countries. I mean, when I'm in England, when I'm in London, I get requests to meet people from most of Africa based on the connection with Rosie. People call me, even this week I got calls. And I'm going to get more when this thing comes up on the 9th. I know I get them all the time. People from the Middle East, Palestinians, Iranians, Iraqis, people from all inside the Middle East there. Oman, Saudi Arabia, you name it, Egypt. All inside there you're getting people. Rosie's was a person that felt every human being had a right, had access to dignity, peace, justice, wherever they were from. Rosie speak to Armenians. Then he could also speak to Turks who subjected the Armenians to some violence. He can speak to all sides and try to convince them to make peace. That's what Rosie was about. Yet the Canadians saw him as a national threat. The same white Canadians who stood outside the school, although there were all kinds of people helping the black students at the time, Jews, English, French, and so on, they said, let the niggers burn. It was the middle of winter and they set fire inside the school. The agent provocateur set the fire inside the school. And what did they do? They said on the street, let the niggers burn. Right now, the new movie that's out, when they said that Rosie became the prime minister, the people clapped in jubilation. The same descendants of the Europeans. A different change in the period of the people, and therefore we had a different outcome and outlook. I remember going to school in Montreal. I had a series of friends. None of the parents could speak English. They were all from different parts of the world, but they were all raised as Canadians. And what was strange about it is that when we had functions, you saw the differences between the parents. But among the young people, there was none. So there was a generation being prepared to be able to cooperate and agree and meet together on a level of dignity. That's the point about it.
And as you're saying that, you know, what dawned into my mind is Rosie Douglas from Portsmouth, from Dominica, had good relation with Gorbachev. You know, who in himself worked with Fidel Castro and many other leaders of the world. It's amazing, Behanzin.
Yes, I mean, these are the things I think we need to teach the young people. The same way, like as the Prime Minister says here, he says, well, look, the global village has changed. There are different objectives. There are different the different ideas floating around. And we need to be able to adapt to these changes. You know? That's what's interesting about that. My daughter comes here towards the end of the month, as closing up of this month, with the Rosie 20th anniversary, and she's going to speak about, at the school named after Rosie, she's going to speak to one black women in tech, because she looks towards Asia, she looks towards, their use of technology. Look at what the Chinese are doing to the American automobile industry. They've decimated it. These guys are producing luxury cars beyond Rolls-Royce, beyond Range Rover in China. Yet, we have a problem with China here because we're saying, oh, the Chinese are this, the Chinese are that. Yet, we could learn from the Chinese. We should learn from the Chinese. So we position ourselves in a place where we can compete. We need to be able to compete. BYD have about 4 cars in Dominica. There's about 15% of the car industry in the UK. I just came back from the UK. BYD. The Americans have tooth and nail trying to stop Chinese imports in. You can buy a BYD vehicle, 10,000 USD right now. You think the Americans could beat the Chinese? You must be crazy. Look at the technology. Look at the new Chinese 6th generation aircraft. The Americans can't touch them.
And it is good that you can say that today, Behanzin. The reason why I am kind of very elated, excited about what you're talking about China, when Rosie Douglas in the early 90s, mid 90s, was literally advocating for the government at the time, both the Freedom Party and the United Douglas Party, to create that relationship with that one China policy, and everybody looked at Rosie as a madman.
Yeah, but remember, Rosie in the 60s had already had his connection with the Chinese. While Rosie was in Canada in prison, he had already got the connection with the Chinese. But even here, when Rosie returned here, Rosie was seen radical, and Rosie said, listen to the so-called people who felt they could intellectualize the so-called struggle, and started using these ridiculous terms that the average person couldn't understand or comprehend, and they were not really close to the people themselves. So the radical left that was with Rosie turned on Rosie. When Rosie decided to finance the Labour Party, make resources available to the party, they basically fought Rosie. Rosie felt it was sensible at that time to join an electoral process and agitate for change. They were trying to kill Rosie. The very people that were supposed to be left were trying to kill Rosie. In fact, he told me one of those who saved him and saved his life was Charles Pascal. That's why to this day we're still very close.
Lloyd Pascal.
Lloyd Pascal.
Lloyd Pascal.
He was very, very instrumental in the Rosie survival that we see there. The rest of the people were actually attacking him. And right now, you say anything about Rosie, my friend, in front of Lloyd Pascal, good luck to you. He's not taking it. He coming and he confronting you one time. He's not taking that. And he was one of those, when Rosie was buried in his suit, while the dignitaries sat in their tent and in their comfort, he took a shovel and he covered his friend. Because he knew if anything happened to him in battle, he would have to bury his friend. So I know those people. Equally, I know the people like Blackmore, when he lost the election and the promises Rosie made to him about trying to stick around and so on. So when you hear Honorable Blackmore speaks, you hear the passion from that. You hear that relationship that he had. I cannot measure all of the relationships Rosie had. But I tell you, I continue to meet people that this man has touched. And they continue to tell me about the importance of this man. And I tell you, the fact that right here, they would send people to keep an eye on him, to try to control him, to limit. That's why Rosie took so long to come to power, because everybody was on him. They spent a large amount of resources to keep Rosie from ever coming to power. It failed because Rosie had a connection with people. He still does, even in his death. He still does. When I went to see the Honorable Prime Minister in preparation of this events I'm trying to organize there, I can see the emotion. I can see the importance of Rosie in him. I saw him conduct himself honorably in Taiwan on Rosie's first trip. I saw it. People attack me. They go, "Oh, how could you join these guys?" And no. Yes, I accept this. I remember I was the secretary in the largest ward in England when New Labour changed to sit itself in a better place to get elected and to take power in England. But there was a hemorrhage because a lot of people were pushed out. Those coming in from the trade unions were pushed out. The more radical part of the party were pushed out, and there was a hemorrhage that took place as Tony Blair and his tight group began to articulate a change necessary for the Labour Party to be able to become electable and then take the power to make the changes necessary to redistribute some of the wealth in the country. And I sat there doing that. I was from Dominica, yes, not a British person, but I was a British resident. I had British children, British assets, British property. And at the same time, we were working politically. We sat on school boards, my wife and myself, and we engaged the schools that our children were going to and the other schools in our area. And there was a huge, huge change. I think the same thing happened here. Once Rosie passed, I think people expected Rosie to be Pear. People expected Rosie to be Roosevelt Skerritt, Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt. And Rosie's Rosie. There's no Rosie. But there are attributes that these people have that are very similar to Rosie, which makes them ingratiate and connection and naturally connect to people in a way that is difficult for any opposition to actually be able to do. That's part of the problem. But Rosie is somebody that is yet to be really assessed properly. I don't think people understand everything about him. And I hope that in future we will engage, we'll look at what kind of person he was. But one thing about him, he was about people. Rosie was about people. He wasn't about anything. He wasn't about elitism. He wasn't about special this or special. He was about people. That's what he was about. So most of what he did was plan for future. Send people to school. Encourage people to go to school. Encourage people. And he wouldn't just say, Rosie would give you money. Rosie would deny his children, but give people he thought were more in need than some of his children. I saw it. We never got angry with that because we knew what he was about. We knew what he was trying to do. People say, the scholarship thing. Some people are trying to take credit for the scholarship thing in Cuba. But Rosie is one of those that would go to Cuba, put food in people's fridge, assist them with their family, provide assistance to them. Not just talk. I know what this man was about. And yet, we don't know all about him. We know what we know from the perspective that we have of him, but not necessarily what everybody knows or understand about him.
Very interesting. Would you? It's the common touch in terms of transforming people's life through education. Is there going to be? I know for the anniversary, is there going to be any activity in terms of naming a scholarship, the Rosie Douglas scholarship? Would there ever be that situation?
Okay, all right, I know. Well, what we've been modest in terms of what we're trying to achieve. A lot of time have gone where we have either forgotten to mention things about him and those kind of things. So there's lots of that going on. But I'm hoping that this 20th anniversary is the start of what will be an annual lecture at least, maybe an annual award in his name. And, I remember I was having a discussion with my youngest daughter, Sophia, and her degree is a degree she receives with a very interesting apprenticeship program in the UK where private companies, in partnership with the government, identify areas of future growth in their business, and then would encourage people to study in those areas. And that's what she did. And she's trying to explain that maybe in the small countries in the Caribbean, that we should choose and identify a partnership with particular companies within the economy who will join partnership with the government, identifying areas of future growth in their business or growth or business activities, and then assist young people who would go into a degree knowing that there is a work element to it right throughout the degree, and there is a job prospects at the end of it. So there's no big, huge debt. She wants to come and talk about those kinds of things, and it's interesting the way they're looking at it. I think it's something that there's interest in St. Lucia, there's interest in St. Vincent about some of the things that she has to say. She's only 23. But it's interesting that even at that age, she speaks at several different schools, especially black women. And I mean, I'm so impressed that this 23-year-old can engage herself in these kinds of activities as opposed to, being involved in derogatory stuff. So I'm very proud of that. So I say Rosie was always interested in the future and the future of young people. We cannot run a country unless we're able to give a young person something to say, you know what, I could do this, I could do that when I get older. And if we cannot do that for young people, we have a problem, because we need to make arrangement for the generation that comes after us.
No.
That's what Rosie was about.
No, Behanzin, sorry. I'm showing some pictures of your dad there. I know that your dad had some great connections in the Caribbean. I know he was a very good friend of Team Hector.
Yeah.
A very good friend of George Odlum.
Yes.
A very good friend of Via Bird.
Mm-hmm.
A very good friend of Bishop.
Yes.
A very good friend of Portia and Portia Simpson of Jamaica, and Michael Manley of Jamaica. Mm-hmm. And the list can go on in the region. George Odlum in St. Lucia. Tell me, in all of this preparation that Rosie made for the region, did he ever dreamt that he would have been a prime minister?
Well, I don't know whether, I think Rosie's interest was more about trying to identify resources for Dominica. I don't think he was interested necessarily in being prime minister, but he felt that it was necessary for them to take power to be able to do that, because in a Westminster system, you're either in or out. And if you have power, then you could deliver. If you don't, then you can't. As simple as that. So I don't think he was that. And he always just say, look, I only want one term. He always made that comment. So he was more interested in maybe being international secretary of the party. That's something he enjoyed a lot. And then the same thing was in terms of being maybe a foreign minister. That's what Rosie was interested in.
Well, I know for sure that his first position in the Labour Party, when he entered the Labour Party,
secretary.
was international secretary.
Exactly, yes.
No,
yes.
We're showing some pictures.
That's my interest as well.
I was about to say that to you, but I said I would say that down the road, because someone just sent me a message and said, well, you would be one of the best foreign minister that you could have, that we could get. Yeah. I'm showing a picture here with your dad and the former president, Mr. Shaw, Bernard Shaw.
Yes.
After taking his oath, receiving his instrument as prime minister.
Yes.
How do you feel just watching this?
Well, Mr. Shaw was a very interesting man. I'll tell you, I grew up. That's why I've always said before, that I never really attacked Ian personally, because it wasn't about Ian. It was about Ian's father. When my father left, and he returned to Dominica, a large portion of my time, I was raised with Mike's family. Mike took us in, myself and Sean. So I never attacked Ian, because I didn't think it was right to attack Mike. Because Mike used to bring us everywhere he went. He used to, when he was preparing his parliamentary papers, we were there in Mopac. The man had a library. Rosie put a library up by Mike. You'd come there and read all kinds of materials. Rosie used to bring books all over the place. He used to do he basically favored people who would try to read and study different systems for the application in here, in our country. So that's what it was about. So I met all kinds of leaders came there. I remember Eugenia couldn't pass Portsmouth. I remember Patrick John coming to Mike's house in Zikak, a house that Mike rented from a guy called Mandin. There was a Christmas tree outside. Mike took that Christmas tree and used to take branches to beat people inside the house. I remember I got a beating once because of something I had done. And the tree almost died because they should use it to beat people. You know what I mean? I remember all of these leaders passed in the house when I was a little child. So I saw all of the changes that went through over the years. The police used to come there guarding this and guarding that. All sorts of things. Mike going to Parliament. I went through all of those things. I remember Eugenia Charles and her engagements with Mike. She was actually the godmother of one of Mike's sisters. You know.
Here it is, your father signing his instrument to become the Prime Minister.
Yes.
That would have been a proud moment for the Douglas family.
Yes, it was. I think my father showed up with his mother. My grandmother he went with that time there. But you know, I use Rosie's pen when I sign to register to practice in the region. I use a pen that I got from Rosie, a Mont Blanc pen I got from Rosie. I use that pen to sign. I've signed here with that pen as well. Here.
See this picture here of Rosie, Dominica's flag behind him.
Yes, after he had won.
In deep thought.
Yes.
What do you think Rosie would have thinking at this time?
It's difficult to tell because, Rosie was a complex fellow, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He was a complex person.
Yeah.
But, I think when I used to always tell Rosie, look, you're disorganized and you'll probably push on the door of power and then you'll fail and stumble inside. That's what I told him is going to happen to him. Because it's the people that will decide when you will come. But he was concerned about a lot of things, things like electoral reforms, things like financing of political parties and those sort of things. All those things took a lot of Rosie. But when he came to office, I thought there was this massive expectation for him.
Just hold that thought, please. Someone's on the line. Good evening. Good evening.
Say good night to Mr. Behanzin.
Good night.
Yes, I really appreciate some of your thoughts. You're bringing back memories to me. You was one of the best speakers I ever heard speak on Rosie matters internationally. I wouldn't stay long because I did give a presentation last night on Cairo with a presentation of the different people, give a speech of Rosie. But my experience with Rosie in my village in 1979, he was a very motivated guy, a very activist person. And in one of my last experiences I had, I get pushed by him in two small protests at Mendenhall Airport, stopping an aircraft from moving and trying to block the road at Baybush. Mm-hmm. But one of my experiences I had with him was he put us on guard at the foot of the airport and on the beach. And I remember one night when he showed up and he gave us certain information which I cannot give on the air. Certain things had to arrive, but then it didn't work out. But there was a few guys with firearms and he was guarded. And there was one guy, I think he had a little bit of toxic in his head. And soon after Rosie left, and we keep warning that guy with the firearm in his hand. And in around 5 minutes, Rosie didn't reach on the other side. The guy fired off a shot, and he took a guy in his leg, and it scattered shots, fall all on me. And this is something I like about our brethren. And all what you say about Rosie there, even within the people around him when he came back, he was just right. He almost loses his life in between Mahu and Massac. The same thing you see earlier on. There was threats on his life right here. He was ambushed between Mahu and Massac at the foot of the Catholic Church. I think it was around 3 o'clock in the morning. And he had to leave his vehicle and go down in the bayside under fire. One of the things I heard the Prime Minister say, not the Prime Minister, Mr. Tony Estefan say, your uncle told him to put up something, which is Mike Douglas, to put up something at the Bubble Square for Rosie. I was telling Oprah earlier on this day on his talk show, I think that piece of land between DBS, the Prime Minister should think of cleaning it up even before the independent and put a billboard with people like Mr. Rosie Douglas, Mike Douglas, Mr. Libyan, all the other rest, and even our great musicians, and leave the building as the old library, just fix it up, like how they fix up the Labour House. And if you have to put on any addition, you can put it at the back, and just maintain it as a library and a museum for the visitors. Put toilet facilities and sell our local food, because I heard the Prime Minister say you want to do something with the playing the table tennis. So I want to bring that to all the suggestions, and I think Tony talked about that. So maybe these guys can contribute, and I really wanted to document some of those things, and that Cecil can play, even you're not on the air one of those times, because some other people don't listen. But I want to thank your father, because your father do a lot for Marigot young people, form cooperative, give them land, just like Mike Douglas. Because I remember where Ross School used to be at Meru, it was a little guest house, plywood guest house, single guest house on the hill there. But Rosie played a good part by reforming young men in Marigot, Dreadex, Candlelights, giving them land. Have a good night. I appreciate the help, my brother.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that.
This one here that you're looking at, Rosie Douglas, the rebel, is this? Would you say that?
Well, I like that picture. The one I use also when I announced this year the anniversary, where he puts his finger up in the air and everything. Those are my favorite pictures of him.
And I'm going to show you another one earlier on. Hold on, I'm sorry. I just want to show you another one. I think I need you to look at this one. You spoke quite a lot about this guy earlier on. You see the guy in the background?
Yes.
You spoke earlier on about this guy.
Himself.
Yes, it's a Blackmore.
Yes, right behind Rosie's shoulder.
Right behind Rosie's shoulder.
Yes.
You spoke about Blackmore in those days.
I actually think that Blackmore is probably one of the most successful power reps. I see this man sitting while they were doing the river defenses in Maho. And it's just a classic picture of Blackmore, because Honorable Blackmore, he would be present at whatever development was taking place in his community that he probably had something to do with. You'd see him right there. If it's a bulldozer doing some work, or somebody digging something, or making some kind of, kind of a defense or whatever it is, he's there in person. So I respect for that.
And I'm sure Blackmore will be happy to hear that. So tell us a little bit more of Rosie Douglas, the man.
Well, I think that Rosie is somebody that I don't know. I mean, I think he lived for other people, not for himself. I always give the joke where you come into his car and then he would turn the music down or turn it off and tell you, right, what would you like to listen to? The man is on his way, he's going wherever he's going, and he stops to pick you up. Yet he will inconvenience himself of what he was doing to accommodate you and make you feel welcome in his space.
So let's go back to the telephone. Good evening to you, caller. Good evening.
Good evening.
That sounds like very much Nathan Bannis.
Nathan Bannis, yes.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I've been listening to you all. Very, very interesting.
Yes, Nathan.
Well, Nathan, I say, without you, Rosie couldn't have done half of what he did there, my friend. Because while he was absent, you were the one that was present for him. So I give full respect for that, and I don't know, I could never thank you more for all what you've done for Rosie. And not just you, your family, because it was, I remember you were probably, they said, oh, you was a heckler, you were concerned, and then you became this personal assistant that he never had. And if it wasn't for you and what you're able to do and deliver, I remember all the difficulties. You had to fix transport. You had to make sure you pick him up, and every time when he was not there, it was you. And then people come looking for Rosie, and they don't find Rosie. It's Nathan they're looking for. So I want to thank you for that, my brother.
Tiyani, it's 21 years of service to Rosie, primarily, and then the Labour Party.
Yeah.
21 years of service. But you said nobody could have said it better than you. You said some very interesting things here tonight. And even when I spoke to Clarence and Ghost on Wednesday night, I got a few calls and so on, people, telling me, oh, you knew a lot about Rosie. But I guess these are people that maybe didn't understand the extent of the friendship.
Yes.
And the work that Rosie and myself did together over the years. But you said something very interesting here tonight. And maybe it's something I would like to share with the Dominican people. It's something I've never said to people before. Mm-hmm. You said that you were worried maybe a couple months before Rosie passed away about him not living much longer, about his security.
Yeah.
What caused you to? What made you say that? Why you felt that he needed to take hold of his security?
Well, I know that you were always there with him, and I'm not making no aspersions on that. The thing is that there was a time when I started seeing certain things in the press. I remember Afi Martin made a statement. He's saying, "Oh, we have to protect Rosie against himself." I'm thinking, what kind of a stupid statement is that? Why would you make such a statement? And then I had a lot of premonitions, I had a lot of dreams, and I was trying to talk to him, and I felt that, first of all, I thought that you ought to have been just focusing on his security, period. And I think you should probably have gotten training from the Chinese and all of those things, right? So I felt that the security arrangement around had to change, because Rosie could not have existed the way he was carrying on there, without. I got a call once from Charles Taylor, because Charles Taylor was not happy with some food arrangements that he saw at the Mataba for Rosie, and that involved a Dominican. And I'm thinking, how does he, watch this with such intensity and then calls me about that? You understand? So that's what I mean. There was a lot of those things. And then I remember, I'm sure you remember the first discussion I made, Rosie just dismissed me. Rosie goes, "Oh, I cannot be killed. The country will become ungovernable." And I said, listen to him. I said, listen, I remember the second time when I spoke to him, I said, listen, this will depend on whether or not people perceive that however you died is natural, or whether they can see how you may have been killed. I remember telling him that. And he said, "Oh, they cannot do it." I said, "Rosie, it all depends on how these guys figure they can kill you. If you think they're not going to come and shoot you and knife you, and they're not going to do that. They will do it by using means that are not easily detectable." I remember when I had my problem with Bellot, who they put in charge of the thing. When I was on Mad a couple of days ago, somebody asked me about the autopsy. It was complete nonsense. We don't have a forensic pathologist. In fact, because of that experience with Rosie, I am the person that is always concerned when somebody dies in Dominica and they come with this stupid so-called autopsy without a forensic pathologist. I have the first forensic pathologist registered in Dominica, a St. Lucia, a young woman. She's about maybe in her late 30s. I got that to happen. So any Dominican person whose family dies in circumstances that are not clear, they can call on that person to come here and carry out a proper autopsy. And the thing is that at the time, I think most of the people were rather young and not really that experienced when Rosie passed. But the government should have called an investigation, a major inquiry, so we could find out what was this guy's last movements. When I came to Dominica 2 or 3 days later, I saw nothing had been removed from the room to check There was nothing. I mean, when I talked to the police chief, I said, well, did you take an itinerary of what was in his bag? No. I'm thinking, what do you mean, no? The man had an inhaler. He had books from the non-aligned movement. He had several documents in the briefcase. They cannot tell me what was inside the briefcase. I'm thinking, what do you think this is, brethren? That don't make no sense. This was a prime minister. We're supposed to know what happened to him.
Tiyani, let's go back a bit. And, what I'm going to say here tonight is something I have never shared with people before, but I'll share some information with you tonight and the rest of the Dominican people.
Yeah.
Let's go back to July of 2000. You remember we were all in Taipei at that time.
Yes.
Okay? Prime Minister Skerrit was there, Vince Henderson was there, Urban Baron
Grand,
was there.
no, and so on, yes.
Grant, yeah, all right, a whole bunch of us. And when we left Taiwan late July, Rosie continued to travel until that day he returned to Dominica and he passed away that same night.
Yes.
Now, that was the last time Rosie and myself actually traveled together when we were in Taiwan together.
Yeah.
All right? Then, Rosie. We stayed in communication throughout the time he went to Japan and wherever he went to after that, to Libya and all of that. We were in constant communication.
Yes.
Now, I remember when he got to London, he called me and told me he was in London and he was feeling a little fatigue and all of that from all this travel.
Yeah.
So he was going to do a medical examination.
Exactly. I'll come to that.
All right?
Yes.
And that he had the medical examination on Wednesday. All right? Now, he could not get the results at the same time. So he gave the medical doctor, the office in England, a fax number in Dominica to fax his results to of that medical examination. And I know what Rosie did the Wednesday night before he left London to travel to Miami.
Yes.
In fact, when he left London that Wednesday night, he was going to Miami for a meeting, and then he had to travel to Jamaica.
Jamaica, exactly, because the Canadian Prime Minister was supposed to meet them there.
Was supposed to meet him there.
But because of the death of Trudeau, he then left early.
He left early. He left early, but before he left Miami, now the reason for being in Miami was to meet with American intelligence.
Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of that.
I'm aware of that. Two of them met him, and that meeting was facilitated by a Dominican who left Dominica to ensure that meeting took place.
And that is why when you said earlier tonight that Rosie wasn't, concerned about his security, which was, I think, his biggest failure. That was Rosie's biggest failure. Because after Rosie passed away, when Rosie passed away, I was actually in St. Martin. And my good friend Morgan called me that morning, and he said, "Nathan, where are you?" I told him, "I'm on my way to Dominica, coming from St. Martin." He told me, "Rosie just died." I said, "Morgan, are you serious? How you mean Rosie died? Was there a plane crash?" Because that was a Sunday morning. So in my head, I thought Rosie was arriving in Dominica the Sunday morning, and there was a plane crash or something, and Rosie may have died in that plane crash, because we were in constant communication.
Exactly, same here.
All right? Now, after Rosie passed away, I got the results from the doctor's visit that he did in England.
I saw that myself.
All right? And the result showed Rosie was in very good health. The only medication the doctor prescribed for Rosie was some iron tablets.
Yes.
All right? So much so, after I got the results and Rosie passed away and everything, I left Dominica with a copy of those results, brought it to somebody in Barbados, somebody from the British government. I brought those results to in Barbados. just to find out, and he actually took those results and went back to England to find out who was that doctor that actually saw Rosie that could give him a clean bill of health, and for him to pass away a couple of days later of some unexplained problem.
Yeah.
The guy, I can say I wouldn't say his name, but the guy I met with in Barbados with a copy of Rosie's results was somebody from British intelligence. Okay, so he knew who the doctor was, and he told me, Nathan, this doctor was among one of the best you could find in London.
Yeah.
That Rosie saw. So he could not have made such an error.
That's all right.
Where the man was healthy and everything.
But let me tell you what I think. When around the time Rosie died, because when the autopsy took place, they basically stated that, well, it seems to be that Rosie's heart had expanded. It was much bigger than it would be. And the only other person I could see that happened to was Chief Moshood Abiola in Nigeria, who had won elections. The army took over, locked him up, and then the U.S. team, an envoy by Miss Rice from Clinton, visited him and gave him a tea to drink. Nobody knows exactly what the nature of that tea was. He died shortly after with a heart massive expansion, and the heart basically much exploded. That's exactly what happened to Rosie.
So I just want to ask both Nathan and Behanzin to just hold on a while. I'm going to request of my friend Hartley to read something.
Right. They said it was cardiac tamponade.
Yes.
All right, which means cardiac tamponade is what is a life-threatening condition caused by liquid under pressure around the heart.
Yes.
Was it blood pressure that he had?
But listen to this. There was a doctor with Rosie that night, and part of the signs of such a crisis in the body is that the aorta splits, the blood collects in the heart, and what the person is like coughing, and you, but it's the blood that is filling the lungs. That doctor was not aware of what to do, and Rosie needed to have been rushed to some serious medical intervention straight away. But here is this. My concern was this with Mr. Bellot. We don't understand that at the time there was some actions that could be taken via aerosol delivery to prematurely age heart muscles and tissues. I think that's what happened to Rosie. Whatever it is that was given, I think it was done in Miami. It was done most likely by those who came to see him. I don't know how it was administered because Rosie was by himself. A lot of the time, Rosie traveled alone. I just never understood that nonsense. Yeah. He continued to travel alone. I mean, Rosie would disappear for a month. He goes to here, he goes to here. When Tim Hector's wife died, we tried to track down Rosie to tell him, because he was with Tim, to get Tim to come back home because his wife had passed and they hadn't found the body. I think they found her a few days later in some shallow grave with her hand sticking out of the soil, or her finger or something like that. So we had to track him down. Rosie travels alone a number of times by himself. He continues to do this. There was never anybody with him. Most of the prime ministers travel with somebody. They travel with some security person. I know because I make arrangements most of the time for people. Rosie, that's one thing Rosie did. And so we don't know the delivery method of this agent that they gave him, how it was given to him, when it was given to him. But what I found strange, 15 minutes after Rosie died, the CIA post something and they say, Rosie died in Jamaica and it wasn't poisoning. How the hell would they know that? We didn't know who it was. We didn't know what happened to him. How would the CIA know that? And he didn't die in Jamaica because of the fact that the Kenyan Prime Minister died. The meeting is cancelled.
Is that statement substantiated?
Of course it is. Of course it is. I spent a lot of my time trying to find out what happened to Rosie. At one point I couldn't speak, Nathan. The press would not even cover me in Dominica. I had to leave and go to St. Vincent for several hours. I sat there and I gave a series of interviews to get them to release the fact that Rosie said that he wanted to be buried among the people of Portsmouth. That I left Dominica when the mapping, nobody wanted to interview me. They had me on lockdown. So I left the country, went to St. Vincent. At that point now, Ralph Gonzalez eventually calls me and said, okay, I think you've proven your point. I want you to return home and be part of the funeral program. And you've made your point. Every single news source has picked up what you have said. And now they're looking at a different situation in Dominica.
So, Nathan, let me just ask you, in your travels with Rosie Douglas, what impressed you the most?
Mm-hmm.
What impressed you the most in your travels with Rosie?
What impressed me the most?
Yes.
Was that the question?
Yes, what impressed you the most traveling with Rosie?
The respect that he got from everybody he came in touch with. Rosie had a sort of presence that, at that time he wasn't prime minister, or in some cases maybe he wasn't even a member of parliament yet. But Rosie got respect from world leaders, from politicians, from everybody he came in touch with. Yeah, that is what impressed me the most, the respect that he got from everybody. That's why I always said the Dominican people, never really understood Rosie and who he was. But Rosie is somebody that was very, very well respected by everybody around this world. Even the people that hated him respected him for who he was.
I know that you have been to Libya and many other countries in Great Britain and Canada with him. How did you see himself, Rosie Douglas, dealing with this type of people that he met, the leaders of the world?
Well, even when Tiyani spoke tonight about, Dominicans actually guarding Gaddafi in Libya, that was for the 21st anniversary, Tiyani, not the 25th anniversary.
Yeah, 21st.
Yeah, for the 25th anniversary. And that just tells you, that because of the respect that they had for Rosie, the guys that Rosie brought from Dominica, Gaddafi felt that he could trust these guys enough to have them as his personal security on an occasion like that.
Yeah, and I was just saying, it was within 3-4 feet of him.
Yeah.
There was nobody. There was no lines close to those people armed. It was the Dominican guys.
Yeah. And be it, Tim Hector, be it Judge Odlam or whoever it is, these guys respected Rosie. Because at the end of the day, they were able to carry on their political work because of Rosie. Rosie ensured. I'll give you an example. One day, Rosie called me. He was attending a meeting in Barbados. And he told me, go to the Woods shopping mall in Antigua. I will ask for the manager of an institution and just tell her that he sent me. When I got to Antigua, I went to the Woods shopping mall. I found the person and I told the person, I am here representing Rosie. He sent me here. The woman took me and she brought me inside of an office and gave me $50,000. And she told me that is for Rosie. And I took that money, I called Rosie and I told him, the lady gave me $50,000. He told me, buy a ticket and come and meet him in St. Lucia because he's going to leave Barbados now. They will finish up the meeting in Barbados. And St. Lucia was having an election campaign. And I remember that clearly. I bought a ticket. I went to St. Lucia to meet him. When I got there and I saw the way the St. Lucia campaign, the St. Lucia Labour Party was very well organized and everything, I told Rosie, why do you want to spend that money in St. Lucia? Why not keep it for our campaign in Dominica? Rosie told me he got that money to help the guys in St. Lucia, so he's going to spend that money in St. Lucia. And that was when George Odlum and Philip Gipper and all of them won the elections the first time. Because Rosie was able to intervene and help them in the campaign and got them to win the elections.
Yeah.
And, that was Rosie, and that is why he commanded that sort of respect.
But do you know, in Canada, when Rosie raised funds, Rosie always had this important things about ensuring that the money was accounted for. I remember once there was a missing 69 cents, and Rosie made hell to find out why the numbers are not breaking as they're supposed to. He had this enormous responsibility. Once people gave him resources to do something with, he did it with it. And he justified it afterwards. That's Rosie. But Nathan was somebody Rosie trusted to do almost anything, There were things that Rosie would tell me, okay, Nathan is going to do X, Y, and Z and this and that. And that's what happened. He trusted Nathan with his life. He trusted Nathan to do. Nathan did more. It was like Nathan was like Rosie's son, practically. Rosie's comrade. And I don't think that Rosie could have achieved some of the things that he did. Like even when we had to send resources to people, it was Nathan that was responsible for getting that to the people. So I want to thank you for that. I know I have never had an opportunity, although I've said it to several people, but here in the air, I'm telling you right now, my friend, I want to thank you for your support, for your service, not just to Rosie, but to Dominican people and some people in the region. I remember all the stuff you had to do, sending resources to people in Belize, in Jamaica, in Grenada, in St. Lucia, in Antigua. It was you that was doing that. Man. So I want to thank you for that. And you used to go to England, pick up manifesto.
Yeah.
Go and pick up the whole country manifesto. You leaving your wife, your child, going to England because Rosie asked you to go and pick up your manifesto. And that's the things you used to do for Rosie. So I want to thank you for that. I respect that and I acknowledge that.
So Nathan, I need to find out, Nathan, how were you feeling when you were right there with Rosie Douglas, but a number of people felt that he was the devil, he was the bad guy, he was the no good, don't trust him. I mean, we'll remember in 85 election, 1990 election, how he was stained by many people. How did you feel as an individual working with Rosie and knowing the heart of Rosie Douglas?
No, well, I never felt any way about it. All I told myself, people will eventually get to know Rosie. I mean, it took them a very long time, unfortunately, but I always felt that over time, because I'll give you an example. My mother was a Bido Adventist, all right? And somebody that wouldn't want to hear about Rosie, all right, in the beginning, in the early years. After a few years, you know what my mother said to me? My mother said to me that she believes only Adventists will go to heaven. If you're in any other religious denomination, you're not going to go to heaven. Only Adventists that will go to heaven. But there's one non-Adventist that will be in heaven, and that is Rosie. The same person she would not want to see in the early years. In her latter years, she told me that she believes there's one Adventist that will go to heaven, and that is Rosie.
One non-Adventist.
One non-Adventist that will go to heaven, and that is Rosie, because she understood that he was a good man with a good heart that was about helping people having a better life.
Now, Nathan, how was Rosie able to, in the 2000 election, able to identify young, bright, visionary men to be part of his mission?
Well, I'll tell you what. Rosie didn't just, out of the blue, just identify identify people. Every day Rosie spent in Dominica, he was about finding people. I'll give you an example. Whenever Rosie would travel and come back to Dominica, sometimes I used to be really angry with Rosie because I felt, Rosie was overdoing it. Rosie would travel from London, an 8-hour flight, get to Dominica, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, 5 o'clock most times. And Rosie would tell me, let's go to La Plaine, or let's go to Grand Fort. And I'm saying that man is, and from the time he gets into the vehicle, he would be sleeping on my shoulder, falling down on my leg, and all of that, dead tired, sleeping away. But he's going to La Plaine, or he's going to Grand Fort. You know why? Because he always had somebody in every constituency as a resource person that he could talk to, and he would be asking them questions. Who you think would be a good candidate? Who you think would be a good person to run for that constituency? Rosie was always about political work. Morning, noon, and night, tired or non-tired or whatever it is. Rosie was just about doing political work. So he would go to Vegas, he would go to to Wesley, wherever it is, and he would have a few people there he would be able to talk to and always ask them, who you think would be a good person to run for that constituency? And that is how he was able to identify certain people. But I'll also tell you something about Rosie, because right there in the constituency of Roseau, strange, Rosie identified an individual. He was introduced to that individual by a certain person. I cannot call names. I don't want to call names, but maybe you'll know who I'm talking about. He was that particular person in Roseau, a lawyer, nice English and everything, was identified by a friend of Rosie as a good candidate for the Roseau constituency. He actually ran and lost for the Labour Party in Roseau. But 3 months after becoming a member of the Labour Party, I don't know if he was ever a member of the Labour Party, he ran for the Labour Party. Rosie told me that guy is a waste of time. With his nice English and everything, that guy is a waste of time. And the same thing happened for a number of people Rosie chose as candidates or ran for the Labour Party. 3 months, 6 months into talking to them and so on, he would say, okay, this person is a good person, or this person is a waste of time. He was able to see through people very easily. That is one of the qualities that Rosie had.
So I know in 2000 he worked with people like Matthew Walters, Osborne Riviere, that same individual we're talking about, David Bruni, Jacqueline Theodore, Roosevelt Skerritt, Reginald Ostry, Kelly Grano, Eugene Maffey, Urban Baron, Dr. John Toussaint, Benjamin Shillingford, we call him Benji, Vince Henderson, Terry James, Brian Louis, Pierre Charles, Lloyd Pascal, Ian Pinard, Raymond Blackmore, Alfred Roll, and Ambrose George. And out of these men, 10 of them made it through and joined the Freedom Party. What did you make, Nathan, when you heard, or in the negotiations, I'm sure that Rosie would have said to you where they are, that they were going to join the Freedom Party to make a coalition?
Well,
did you leave out a name?
Did I? No. Okay. Rosie Douglas?
No.
No.
Where was Skerritt at the time?
I called Skerritt. I called
okay.
Skerritt very early. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I during the time Rosie was going around identifying these candidates, I remember clearly some of them, he criticized, because he felt, I don't know if you guys understood or if you guys knew how difficult it was at the time to get people to run for the Labour Party. Because the Labour Party being in opposition for almost 20 years, 15 years, people felt there was no chance of the Labour Party ever forming the government. I remember clearly a former parliamentary representative for La Plaine. When Rosie spoke to him about, coming back to the Labour Party and running for the Labour Party, he said that he don't believe the Labour Party will ever be able to win an election in Dominica.
And it's strange that you're saying that, though, Nathan, sorry, because that individual and Rosie worked quite well. They both had the same ideology. And it was strange that, when Rosie became leader of the Labour Party, that he did not see the need to be part of Rosie's team.
Because they felt that the Labour Party would never be able to win an election because they saw what happened in 1995. UWP came from nowhere and was able to form the government. I remember, I don't know if, you guys are aware of that, but you remember in the breakup of Edison James and the Freedom Party, the Labour Party held a big meeting in Londonderry and tried to get Edison James to join the Labour Party. Are you aware of that, Cecil?
Very much aware. Very, very much aware.
Right.
That took place in Londonderry, I think.
Yes, in Londonderry.
Yes, that took place in Londonderry. And one of the reasons Edison gave at the time for not coming into the Labour Party, he said as long as Rosie and Mike is in the Labour Party, then he has no chance of ever becoming Prime Minister. So that was one of his reasons for not joining the Labour Party at the time. And I also remember the struggle that Rosie had, prior to the 2000 election, trying to get, who he felt was good candidates for the Labour Party. I remember the numerous conversations with Blackmore in Maho and all the others.
Yeah, that was a huge challenge for and preoccupation for Rosie, just getting the right candidates. Huge,
getting
all the time.
Right candidate.
All the time.
Yeah. And I remember him telling me, in a sarcastic way, some of those guys that cannot even win seats, but just to show presence, they that have the biggest demands. So Rosie had that kind of concern as well. But Rosie was determined because he felt that the amount of work that we had done all over Dominica in the years that the Dominican people had understood the Labour Party and was going to give the Labour Party a chance in 2000. He honestly felt that way. And he was right. There was something telling him that this is the year that we are going to win that election. Because I remember when the UWP announced the election at that sunrise, whatever it is that they were having, and felt that they had catched the Labour Party with their pants down.
Yes.
What they didn't know at the time, that Rosie had Eddie Lambert and a few other people writing a manifesto for about 6 to 8 months prior to the UWP calling the elections. So even when they announced the elections, his manifesto and all his candidates
was ready.
was all in place. So I remember when they announced the elections that Sunday night or early hours of Monday morning, the Tuesday morning, I was on a plane heading to London to have the manifesto printed. I remember, I don't know if Tiyani was still in London.
Yes, I was in London. I met you when I met you.
Right. Oh, yeah. When I came in, you picked me up.
Exactly. I was the one that picked you up.
You were the one that picked me up. And I remember, man, I was tired and sleeping away, and you took me all over before bringing me home.
Yes.
I remember those days. But I actually stayed with David Wilkinson. You remember David?
That's right.
Right. He
in the
was
top
married.
by Woolwich there, yeah.
Yeah.
And he would play a massive role in not just that manifesto, but the others.
Oh yeah. David Wilkinson was a key guy. Is he still alive, Tiyani?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
He's still alive. I think he's still alive.
Okay.
But
David
you know, Nathan, what I thought, that the fact that people like Dr. McCook used to come to almost everything Rosie had in Dominica and give free medical service, medicines, care. advice. And he's somebody that's now, issue with blindness. I think that's somebody that we should honor. The country should honor and give this man an award for what he had done for us. Yes. Makuk. I tried my best to see if I can get him to come on Thursday, pick him up or whatever it is, to give him a recognition.
I think we should get into Dominica during that period.
Yeah, but he had two other colleagues apart from
Bernie
Dr.
Grant.
Makuk, there were
Bernie
two
Grant.
other colleagues.
Yeah.
That traveled with him every time. Because sometimes, people don't even understand. Because sometimes Dr. Makuk would actually charter a small plane. Have the guys bring him to Dominica with all his medication, all his medicine and everything to take care of Dominican people.
And you must also say that when Dr. Makuk was actually coming to Dominica, it had to be in darkness because he would not have been allowed to visit some of those people because of the whole medical rules that they created for him. Yeah. If you remember that very clearly.
Oh yeah. And it wasn't Dr. Makuk alone. I don't know if you remember Puritain from Martinique.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a soldier as well. And Jean Girard, you remember Jean Girard from Marigaland?
I remember him, yes.
These were soldiers in Rosie's army, ready and willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that, Rosie's needs are met. Rosie used to have some huge demands on those guys, just call them up for tomorrow to come to Dominica to see somebody that is sick, and they would make themselves available.
But I remember when they had a meeting in Lago, Portsmouth, and the stage, something was wrong with the stage, and the stage collapsed. And because it had rained earlier on, some people went under the stage to try and shield from the rain. And when the rain, when Mike went on the stage and everybody went on, it was at the end of the meeting, and the stage collapsed, and a young woman was caught underneath. And she was injured. The girl was brought to the hospital. Rosie stayed there until whatever time in the morning, until they were able to get a flight. Same Makuk and them organized to send her there for treatment. Yeah. And he told me after she saw that, she stopped supporting Eugenia Child and she started supporting Rosie. The woman told me she sat there and saw Rosie sit down waiting. Remember there was an old hospital in those days with those little trackways and alleyways. He sat there and he waited I continued to communicate with that person and became a good friend to make sure she was okay. That's what Rosie was about.
And let us not forget to Bernie Grant, who played a big role in the whole industry, the banana industry.
Yes.
Helping to guide us.
Give Rosie access to Parliament.
To Parliament, European Parliament. That must never be forgotten.
Yes, and even right into the Italians like Dacia Vallat and all those people that Rosie was able to get assistance from, who would raise these issues as members of the MEP inside Parliament. They used to come by Conrad, and Rosie would give these guys information, and the next day you would hear it on television where they're actually raising these questions in the House and in the European Parliament. So he was very. I remember a meeting we had with Bowen Wells where Rosie had convinced Bowen Wells, who was really a paid lobby, although as an MP, a paid lobby for geese. And we went to I drove him all the way, after picking up at Gatwick, I drove him all the way to Spalding to see the ripening houses where they would put the bananas in these huge rooms, and they'd be ripe in 2-3 days, after coming from the Caribbean as green fruit. And I remember the way that, Rosie was able to convince Bowen Wells to get the Prime Minister of Britain to make an offer to uplift the cruise ship berth apron in Portsmouth. Eugenia shows up in London. She's afraid to call a proper meeting. She's afraid to engage, but Rosie had done all of the work. All she had to say was yes. She said, it's not a priority. So the people of Portsmouth and the benefits that Rosie had negotiated stood again without being fulfilled because the people did not want Portsmouth to benefit from what Rosie had engaged Bowen Wells to. I was there. I took the pictures. He prepared the articles. All of the pictures people saw of him, I took those pictures.
Let me just make a point here. One of the other persons we have to remember is Portia Simpson. You know, she suffers with Alzheimer's now.
Alzheimer's, yes.
Right, and
Jamaica Prime Minister.
I know the Jamaican Prime Minister gave her an award. So, I mean, her contribution to the Labour Party at the time, I remember seeing her in Londonderry when they had a meeting, and she made a lot of trips to Dominica in terms of supporting the Labour Party. When
She was then the leader of the PNP.
PNP. So that's another person I think the Labour Party, you know, should begin to recognize. That's my contribution.
I mean, the Labour Party, you know, under Rosie Douglas, had developed friendships with all kinds of people around the world. And, you know, that's what I always said. You know, it's almost unbelievable that a man did all this work for 20 plus years, and then 8 months into his leadership of the country, he passed away. Because some of the things Tiyani said tonight, they're completely true. Rosie had a commitment from the Libyans, you know, for a huge sum of money, and I know they would have delivered on that commitment, you know, and, you know, it's really a shame. Sometimes these are the things that bothers me, that after a man made all this contribution towards the development of Dominica, just at the time when he was, you know, about to take off on that mission, he passed away.
But the other thing as well, you know, the Libyans, is that Rosie had given a lot to the Libyans. I think he was expecting a massive contribution from them, and they were so excited when he became prime minister. In fact, they wanted him to even abandon Dominica and come and work for them full time. Rosie got all of the dispute that Libya had in the Middle East. Rosie used to go and resolve it. They pick up a Libyan agent in some country. They jail him. They interrogate him or whatever it is. They would send Rosie to liberate him. Rosie would go to Mogadishu. Rosie would be in Ethiopia. All of the places. I remember when they had the war with Chad. Rosie was the one that resolved most of these problems. It was incredible. So it was as if he was like a continuous traveler assisting the Mataba. And the Mataba, I saw what the Mataba did for the forces in Angola. I saw it. I was there. I saw them train. I saw the way they used to come, the devils of the desert used to train. The way that Omar Mukhtar fought and beat the Italians. Some of the tactics that were used back then were still being used by the Libyan forces now. And it was just sad to see how the Americans were able to convince the Libyan people to move against their own Gaddafi. And that was a difficult thing to watch, because I had been to Libya several times. I had brought youth there. I had inspired a number of people from Toronto, from Montreal, different parts of Canada, to come and meet different political leaders that they would hear about or read about and never saw. They actually saw those people in the flesh, in the Mataba. I remember I came into the library once and I saw somebody reading my book, and later to discover that person was Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was somebody who was arrested in America, jailed in America. He escaped with a number of actual criminals, and then because he was a political person that was picked up by the Americans to hand to the authorities in his country, he escaped, went all the way through Mexico, and eventually went straight back into Africa, and to later be guided and assisted by the Libyans to take over power in their country. And all of that, Rosie was involved in all of those things. You know, he was a prankster. He was a very funny man. I'm sure Nathan will tell you that. And he played jokes on everyone. You know, from Ralph Gonzalez to Tim Hector. I saw Rosie on his knees throwing sand in Tim Hector's room to frighten Tim because of the 25th anniversary, and Rosie convinced him, my God, the Americans are going to bomb us now, we're all here, and all this other stuff. And Tim was a scaredy cat. He was just he was scared of anything, you know. And Rosie used to throw sand, and then he would take a leaf and try to take off his footprints, and then he would tell Tim, look, somebody throwing sand in your office, guys. Look what's going on there. And Tim would get worried, you know what I mean? These guys were just too much.
There is a joke about Rosie and Ralph, but I won't.
Yeah, I know that one. Ralph told me about it when I went to see. A company sent me to negotiate something with Ralph in 2015. When I went there, he told me that joke. So I know that joke well.
Interesting.
But I mean, Rosie was such an interesting guy. I remember some days we would go to Tim's house in Antigua. I don't know if you ever had that encounter, And there was this girl that would come and cook for us. And these guys would sit there for a week talking, just talk. But these were such interesting guys.
Discussions, yes. Well, I remember every time I'm passing through Antigua, I used to stay by Tim's house. And then I would suddenly just crash on the couch. When I get up, mosquitoes in my tail. But Tim was a guy, he'll pick you up, or the driver will pick you up, bring you to the house, and most of the transfer that I was going through is normally, once I'm in Antigua, it's Tim's house. That we used to pass through, so.
And we must not forget also that Fête Maouin, getting the friends
those
of
kind of
Martinique,
yes.
the relationship in creating that big fête of the fishermen in Portsmouth, We must not forget the whole idea of Rosie Douglas getting cultural groups from Martinique and Guadeloupe to bring them down to any activity that he would have had in Dominica. We must not also forget African Liberation Day.
Yes.
People like the Speaker of the President, Speaker of the House, got himself involved in politics because he was asked to speak and to introduce Rosie Douglas on African Liberation Day in Salisbury. So Rosie Douglas has done quite a lot that many of us may not be totally aware as to the things that he has done.
But Nathan, let me ask you a question, Nathan. I mean, people always ask me, do you think Rosie died of natural causes? Given what you know, given you what you and I know, what do you think? I mean, what is your feeling, and what did it make you feel at the time?
I cannot speculate. I can just give you the facts. And what I am telling you is the week Rosie stayed in London for about 4 or 5 days when he came back from Japan before heading to Miami and then to Jamaica. Well, he didn't even go to Jamaica again. From Miami, he came straight to Dominica. Right. But during that 3-4 days he stayed in London, we were talking to each other every day. Rosie never indicated that he had any problems medically or whatever it is. He just told me he was going to do this checkup. And I mean, in our conversations, I never felt that he was not himself. He was the Rosie that I always knew, jovial, and, I mean, there's something I won't even say, but Rosie,
that is why I think, Nathan, that I don't want us to speculate about the death of Rosie.
Exactly. Exactly.
I rather we on DBS Radio we pride ourselves for the facts. So I don't want us to say maybe or speculate.
Right. All I can tell you is Rosie and myself spoke for that 3 or 4 days that he spent in London, and he told me what he did the Wednesday night, because at the time Rosie had a girlfriend in England. I don't know if you're aware of that, Tiyani.
Yes, I remember.
But, right. Rosie had a girlfriend in England, and you remember his favorite hotel, the Grosvenor.
The Grosvenor, yes.
Yes, he was at that hotel the Wednesday night when he called me, and he told me his girlfriend was there with him, and we had a good conversation. And like I said, he told me he had gone to see a specialist and so on, because he hadn't done a checkup for a while and so on. So he went to see a specialist, but he wasn't complaining of anything. And the results of his medical examination got to Dominica to me after he died. those results showed that Rosie's organs were very normal, and the only observation the doctor made was his blood level was a bit low. So he requested that Rosie should take some iron tablets. But Rosie never even got to see those results. I saw those results. Mm-hmm. So I was very confused after I received the copy of those tests that he did. Mm-hmm. So I took those results because at the time I was in close communication with a British agent. So I took the results of Rosie's medical examination to that guy in Barbados. I won't say what his name was, but I took the results to him, and he took the results back to England to find out. In fact, he met with the doctor and had a conversation with the doctor. And when that guy and myself met a month later, he told me, Nathan, this was a highly qualified doctor, and he don't believe that the doctor could have made such an error. He thinks the results that the doctor gave Rosie were correct. But that agent also told me something very interesting. Now, I don't think I should say, for privacy and all of that, I don't think I should say that on the radio, what that guy told me. He was actually MI6. But it's somebody I used to meet with on a regular basis once a month. I wouldn't say what was the purpose of me meeting him once a month, but we had regular meetings, different parts of the world, once a month. And so I have some speculation based on what the results showed, what the autopsy showed. There is something wrong somewhere, Tiyani. I'm not sure where it went wrong, but something went wrong.
Yes. I think we have the same view on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Nifan, the Labour Party, Behanzin and others are they are going to be having a discussion, I think on the 9th, on the life of Rosie. His friend, comrade, Ralph Gonzalez will be here. What do you make of this?
Well, I think they've chosen the right person, because among the guys, Tim Hector is no longer with us. George Odlum is no longer with us. I don't know if Tiyani knew of Irving Chong in Jamaica.
Yes, I knew him. Debbie knows him as well.
Okay, that's somebody I lost touch with, so I don't know what's up with him. David Comisong of Barbados was also a good friend of Rosie. Terry Mauricio in Grenada was also a very good friend of Rosie. There was this guy, Raymond, I don't remember his first name, of Haiti. That was also a very good friend of Rosie. All these are guys that knew Rosie very well. But I don't think anybody would have been able to do a better job than Ralph Gonzalez.
Yes.
That's somebody go back a long way for Rosie. Yeah. He came to Dominica and spoke on Rosie's platform years before he was Prime Minister. Yes. He and Rosie traveled all over the place together as friends, as comrades, worked together. In fact, I think they knew each other from their days in Canada.
Yes, exactly. Well, most of the New Jewel movement, some of the most of the people from the Caribbean that emerged as leaders in their own countries, they all met up in Montreal. So they knew each other from Montreal days. Yes.
Yeah.
But what is also important about Ralph is that Ralph Gonzalez is also a family friend, in that he's very close to Sister Patricia Douglas, who was very instrumental in some of the educational developments and delivery in St. Vincent. In fact, she was given almost the equivalent of a state funeral in St. Vincent. And so he'll be coming back home almost as a family. He will lay a wreath.
He's married to a Dominican.
I beg your pardon?
He's married to a Dominican.
He's married to Madame Eloise. But also what he's going to do is, for the first time, he's going to lay a wreath on Patricia's grave, on Mike's grave, and then Rosie's grave. Then he will join the family. It's only a family thing. It's not something that is why, because these deaths were very difficult for Comrade Ralph, in terms of, because he knew these people personally. So we don't know what he's going through emotionally. So we don't want to crowd him on that day. It'll just be some small family members and those who will come to assist that reflaying. It wouldn't be a huge public thing. It'll be a very private event. He will then have lunch on Batibu Beach, and then he'll return to his hotel and prepare for his lecture later on that evening.
Yeah, I think he's the ideal person for that purpose.
Yeah.
Could you remind us where this lecture will be taking place?
It'll be on the 9th, which is Thursday coming up. 6:30 is when it will begin. There will be only a few contributions, and then the Prime Minister is expected to address. And then following that, Mr. Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonzalez will deliver the lecture, and then we'll have a closing from that.
Is it going to be at the venue?
State House Conference Room.
What time?
6:30 p.m. on Thursday, the 9th of October, which is Thursday.
Okay.
So, Nefan, thank you very much for your contribution tonight. While I continue talking to, yes, it is really engaging. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Okay.
Yes, Nathan.
Have a good night, guys.
Bless, man.
Yes.
Bless.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit more about this lecture program that you all are planning alongside of the Labour Party. But before you do that, let's go to the telephone quickly. Good evening to you, caller.
Good evening, Cecil, and good evening, BNT.
Good evening.
I believe you all have done a very, wonderful job, great justice, to his legacy. I don't think I've ever met you in person, and I don't think that I'm someone that you know at all. Maybe you must have heard of me. But Dominicans would have more known Rosie only as it relates to the Canadian connection. And that was the struggle that we had in the years. But you have given a great expose of many of the involvement, and the areas of involvement of Rosie. I think that is good so persons can broaden their knowledge as to who Rosie was. In fact, I don't know if our good partner, Afi, I don't know what the relation is, but I guess if he would be listening, there is one thing that I get to know about Rosie, and by making a statement to somebody who was working, I will not mention the organization name, but it's an American organization, and I said, man, if the RIA hired me, I would take off the Queen because I love the royalty and I'd bomb the whole of London in my radical days. You understand? So I was asked the simple question, if I am cemetery. And of course I answered, knowing what that means, I said, modern cemetery. And then the person revealed to me, I gave actually the complete story on that sometime back when we met. And I told him, comrade, he had really introduced me to a higher level that I never knew. And the person said to me, they work, yes, in that American agency, but they work closely with Rosie because the person is Irish and that they are part of Sinn Féin. I don't know if you have heard of the Sinn Féin, the political wing of the RIA.
Sinn Féin, yes.
Sinn Féin, yes.
Sinn
Yes, of
Féin.
course I know it, yes.
Jerry Adams was the head.
Yeah.
Jerry, right, So when he brought that up to me, and then he said certain other things to me, and if I remember who met me at a particular airport, and when I looked, I look at the picture, I look at the person, I realized that it was he. I remember having to be transferred from Pakistani airport, airline, over, the Asian continent, and being transferred onto a Canadian airline. I don't want to give too much details of that. But even up to that time, I never realized the deep connection that you exposed as to Rosie and his connection with so many different governments and so many different countries and persons of importance. But as far as I knew him, I don't want to be as long. I mean, Banis have given a complete story, and Banis, as we all know, is somebody who have been close to him. I remember something that happened in 1985. Was it 85 or 1980? When Rosie made an appeal to run for the Labour Party in the Peebles constituency. I don't know if you remember that incident, Cecil, and at that time, Jenna Armour was acting president and decided to leave the acting president position and run for that same constituency. You remember that, Cecil?
Yes, the Freedom Party requested of him to run for them.
And then we had a very big discussion because OJ at that time was the interim prime minister. And I remember saying, look, the best man to run the seat, though I and the Amos was close, should be Rosie. And Mike took a stance that if Rosie is not running, then he himself, would not join as a candidate of the Labour Party. And we had a very serious situation as to whether we would have enough candidates to run.
Oh, that's the year he ran. Hold on. Is 1980 you said? That's when he ran as the Dominica Labour. He ran as the Dominica
Independent.
No, he ran as an independent.
No, he ran as an independent candidate, but with the name of the
it
was Dominica Labour Progressive Dominica Labour Dominica Progressive Labour Party. Yeah.
No, Dominica Progressive Labour Party was the Amos that was in 1975.
Yes.
No, there was something Labour when he ran. I can't remember the name, but I can. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he decided that he would have to run in any event. You understand me? He decided that he would have to run in any event, but he would run as an independent
candidate. Yes.
But his connection to he wasn't just feeling it about him. Do I think Jenna Armour and Cyrus, Jenna Armour ran, and Cyrus also ran as an independent, and Jenna Armour won that election in that year. But the good thing about it, Rosie never looked safe. You understand me? And when I heard you mention of the persons who should have really be close to Rosie, they were the ones who actually, turned up against him for the work that he did within the Labour Party. So I believe that there is much more that can be said about Rosie. My little things and connection with him, have caused me to have a lot of great respect for him as a man of his word. It's not that every promise of him came true, but he always kept hope alive. He always gives a person, an answer that will keep hope alive. And some way, miraculously, something would happen, maybe not at the time promised, but sometime down the road, something would have happened. And let me say that Rosie will continue to live in the great memory of many a Dominican. Let me just thank you. I think you were in China at some point too, or you speak Chinese as well, Behanzin?
No, I don't speak Chinese, but my brothers does. But I have been, I've traveled with. I traveled on his trip to Taiwan, and I generally travel quite a bit as I studied in England and so on.
And those sort of things, in fact, I got roped in and made a lot of even study some travels as well, but what you call undercover travels. But I've never had the opportunity, but it netted me quick, it netted me good.
Yes.
You understand me?
Yes.
Because after this gentleman spoke to me and tell me who he was, and his function, I was able to get a lot of funding from the various, I don't want to call the agencies names, government agencies to set up sewing factories, set up farms, set up schools, set up all sorts of things, in the little community in which I live.
Yes.
And Rosie was always instrumental in giving certain level of guidance to us as well in doing that.
But before you go, Felix, someone just said that yes, Rosie ran as an independent candidate, but the name of the party that he ran under was the Dominican Democratic Labour Party.
Yeah, the Dominican. Yes, I said
Dominican Democratic Labour Party.
Democratic Labour Party.
Okay. That could be so. That could be so at that time. And you know what happened? Let me just give you an incident. The Americans at that time, that 1980 election, was supporting the Labour Party full blood, full cry. And just because Rosie's name came up, they pull off all level of support. And in those days, what we used to have is little Ahuja, PA system, Lafayette. You remember that Cecil, Lafayette, and Realistic. And the Americans had given me a whole contingent. In fact, I was the person actually receiving things from the Americans.
From Shelley Shelton? From Shelley Shelton?
Yes, Shelley Shelton.
And Bob Gossani.
Yes.
You understand me?
I remember that.
But Felix...
They demanded that I give everything back. But you know your partner is a Gatewa. You understand me? So
the blue and yellow hats.
You know my Gatewa's comrade.
The blue and yellow Tams, man.
I never easy coconut to deal with. So I told Bob Gossani, if he want to make one mistake in his life, you understand me, is to try, because he said that he would get the commissioner of police to ensure that I give that back up, is to try anything foolish. You understand me? And I am sure that the Labour Party will keep. I had Lafayette and Realistic and Ahuja set for every single constituency, to ensure that we cover our meetings. But leaving that aside, Rosie kept to his principles and ensured that the Labour Party, the victory of the Labour Party, did not come, you understand me, as just waving a magic wand. Because remember, we said how many years in opposition?
20
years. Persistence, and one of the words is that, look, let us clean the bowels, let us clean the Labour Party, let us take out all, the entrails in it, and ensure that we have a party that can suit and work along with all classes of our Dominican society. Gentlemen, good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I remember, just before you go, the caller, one of the big problems was when O.J. Seraphine and our good friend Arthur Martin went across to Grenada during the Revolution. Shelley Shelton, of course, was married to William Colby. And William Colby at the time was head of the CIA. So Shelley Shelton was actually being dated by the head of the CIA. And she lived for quite a while in the hotel in Springfield. I saw her many times myself when I went up there.
Good evening, caller. I don't go further.
No, don't go further.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I could not lend my voice to tonight's discussion.
Thank you.
Just to say that I have very, very fond and great childhood memories with who I used to call Daddy Rosie at the time. So this is Honorable Wenham Shepherd.
Wenham, boy, you're not sounding so sexy
there
tonight,
your voice. Disguise your voice.
Disguise your voice.
I suppose it's my Daddy Rosie voice.
I know. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to share a little bit about my own experience with Rosie. Growing up in Portsmouth, of course, that name is a household name you can well imagine. And I mean, I really have good memories only, especially now in the independence season. He would have found his way to Glanville to get some crab callaloo from my granny. And I mean, it was just so nice to know that you have great people in your company or at your house. So it would be nice to share crabs with him. He had probably the biggest bowl that she had at the house at the time. And, he just chilled with us. It was very, very nice to be in his company. I know of many other children who would have gone to various places with Rosie. It was always very comfortable to be around him, and I can tell you he has been a great inspiration even in my own politics, I try to practice some of his best practices, or what I consider to be some of his best practices. And I mean, like I said, the only thing I have of the gentleman are good memories. I remember Rosie helping us. We had a development committee, very young people. We were not more than 15 at the time. And we had the Glanville Improvement Committee. We called it our junior section. And Rosie always used to help us, whether it was with a ball or to take part in some raffle or something of the sort. So, I mean, like I said, very good memories. Of course, in his passing, I thought it was my duty to serve. So when he passed, I was one of the ushers. They didn't even have to ask me, but I was one of the ushers to ensure that the number of visitors that we had come to and through Portsmouth would have been taken care of, the Rosie Douglas way. Just be friendly and cooperative, guide everybody. It was a very painful Sunday. I remember being at church, and my godmother, Auntie Olive, everybody knew Miss Douglas. I remember that is the confirmation. When I looked at her face, I was like, oh no. And then the tears came, and we sat. I remember there was a payphone just by the market area. We sat there practically all day, just trying to, grasp what had happened. Children, just trying to figure out, is he really gone? What is going to happen? So, but even in his passing, it was respect, I would say. It was very dignified. I looked at how people operated at that time, and it was just amazing to see. It was really amazing. So I just thought I would share a little bit of my own experience with Rosie Douglas, Daddy Rosie, as I called him.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Blessed love to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would also want to say, to share the memories with people like Althea Johnson. Althea Johnson, sorry, she lives in Colibistry. Ammonia Paul, now she's Roll,
Yes.
from Paybush.
Paybush.
Senator Irving Knight played a
Yes,
very integral
Knight.
role, with Rosie in those early days. Erickson Romaine, himself,
Still there.
did play a great part. From Granby, you had Miss Morancy. What Morancy? She's Morancy Alexis now. Could I forget her name? In Granby, we had people from all over. Really young people who believed in what Rosie was actually doing for other young people.
Right.
And it was amazing, to see how Rosie was able to wiggle himself through. I remember every time Rosie come to Dominica, he would come to DBS Radio to make sure that he puts an announcement out, to say certain things. Thank God I saw Rosie Douglas the night before he passed, and I spoke with him. Sent me on a mission that night. Some people are saying that I know that at 6:15, 6:30 there about, I spoke to Rosie the very last time that Sunday morning. I gave the same jokes that we're talking about. I can't able to give that joke on radio, but he did speak to me that morning. So when I got that call from Mike Douglas' wife to say, I first got a call from Nanton, and I said, Nanton, if you say the man is sick, bring the man to the hospital. About 9:30, I got a call from Michael Douglas' wife saying that Rosie has passed, and it was unbelievable. I lived in Kingfield at that time, 9th Street, Kingfield, and it was unbelievable. And really, many of us have worked with Rosie, and we have seen the work that he has done for young men and young women. I mean, the number of people who have been to school. Dr. Paul, she has since then gone to the great beyond. You know, her mom would have never be able to make her become a doctor, to give her a dream. But she became a very good medical doctor. And so many Albert Sevre, you know, from Portsmouth. All of these guys really were part and parcel of the life of Rosie Douglas. You know.
Well, let me give you a little thing. When I was going to study in Malta, I met Rosie going to Antigua to visit Tim Hector. And the comrade asked me where I was going. I told him I was going to Malta. And he gave me a letter to take to the Maltese embassy when I should arrive. And he put something in my hand and tell me not to open my hand. I put it in my pocket. So I left him in Antigua and took the BWIA aircraft to Malta, you know. And when I reached to Malta, I was surprised when I pushed mine in my pocket. You know, Rosie had given me some US dollars.
And strange.
That's strange, you know.
Yeah.
Let me give you that last final one. And I went to the embassy in Malta because Malta was a place you couldn't fly straight from London to Libya.
Yes, you have to go
You
to
had to
Malta,
stop through Malta,
then go
and
to
take
Egypt,
and take the
take
ferry,
the ferry to Egypt,
to Egypt.
and then from Egypt to Libya.
Libya.
That's what you did in Behanzin?
Yeah.
That's what
Well,
you
that's
did?
what we were
I
doing.
did that once, but most of the time we flew in
Uh-huh.
because there was Libyan airline flying out of Frankfurt.
Okay.
Okay,
So I
from
took-
Germany.
Yeah, that's
Right.
I took
But
those.
we who went through London,
Yeah. He flew.
so we had to stop over in Malta.
Yes, from
Right.
Malta.
So most of the
take that
guys
ferry.
from Libya who wanted to have nightlife would come from Libya into Malta for
Yes.
the nightlife.
Yeah.
So Malta was the hub. From Malta to Libya. You remember you take that little
Ferry.
the ferry?
Yeah.
Right. So that was the whole
And then
thing.
get across to...
Across
to
the,
you know, you get across to Egypt,
and
then across to Malta.
to
Yeah.
Tripoli.
Yeah, and that sorry, to Libya.
Libya,
You know,
But you
also to-
know something. There was a time when we had the might have been the 21st anniversary, and there was a ferry that left Malta and came into Tripoli. And there was somebody on that ferry, and I missed that picture of him. He was none other than the Muslim leader in Trinidad who had that coup later on.
Abu Bakr.
He was standing right there, and they took a picture. And that at the time there was the same four men that later would go on to protect Gaddafi. Two of them were on that ferry that night, and I remember the celebrations, the singing of all these songs, and I remember that very, very well. And I had a picture of him, and for years. I had the picture. Remember, I went to Trinidad to do my conversion for my law.
Two
practice
guys,
in law.
two guys. If they were alive today, they would have called Sogofly and Hildreth.
Sogofly.
Hildreth Johnson.
Well, Hildreth Johnson was a very interesting character. Well,
Hildreth lived in Libya for some time.
Yeah, he was the one who was always the go-between between
Johnson
Rosie.
as well. Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah. Hildreth Johnson, he died.
But you know what was interesting about Rosie is that although he wasn't he wasn't chosen as a candidate for the Labour, he still financed the Labour Party.
Can I give a story about this part?
Yeah.
I remember in 1985, I think it was, when the Labour Party, Michael Douglas was the leader then, and Rosie decided that he was going to help finance the Labour Party, and there were candidates like Paul Joseph Laplane. There was this short lady, Mabazi, Rosa Central, her husband, I think the Valley.
Yes.
And these three people decided that they were not accepting Rosie's offer of sponsorship to their campaign, because to them Rosie Douglas was communist, the devil himself. Just put
he was
across
vilified. He was vilified.
Yes, in the Labour Party itself. And we saw in 1990 he played a greater role, even a better role. And 3 years later, he became the leader of the party. Yes, can you imagine?
Yeah, can you imagine? I could tell you the name of the gentleman, Jerome Bassi.
Jerome Bassi.
Yes. Ran for that area.
Yeah. And I was about to say, too, I got 2 opportunities from Rosie Douglas. But again, my mother's an Adventist. And to get to Cuba, the boogie and the talk was, you're only eating
pork and rice
and rice and egg.
Yeah.
And so, you cannot find yourself going to Cuba. Never. You will not go to Cuba.
Yeah.
And she took the passport away, making sure that I didn't. I just gotten a passport. I think I'd gone to in '84. I'd gone to Tortola, the Labour Youth Organization,
Okay.
and then 2 years later, Rosie requested that I go to Guyana, to the Curicuri College, of Curicuri College.
Ghana, yeah.
To
The agricultural school.
No, to do cooperative. It's a cooperative school. And my mom said the same thing at the time. Forbes Burnham was a leader. Never. But she was very politically astute. Never. And I never got that opportunity. But that's how parents in those days
Viewed.
And we must say thanks to the people in Paybush who took that opportunity, and some other parents who minds were a little bit more open took that opportunity and allowed their children to go to Cuba, to go to the Soviet Union, to go to Poland, and a few other countries.
Well, some went to Austria.
Austria.
I remember this fellow who was in charge of the what do you call it, Bureau of Standard.
Yes.
He went to Austria.
So quite a number, were given
I was supposed to go to Austria for aeronautical engineering. That's what I was supposed to go do.
He did chemical engineering in Austria. I forgot his first name. But he took the opportunity on the Rosie to go. A few of them went to the Soviet Union as well. So the education aspect of it was very interesting. But
and the name I was looking for early on is Hilgeoff Morancy Alexis.
The one of the things that I remember, Rosie, was the little red book.
Or the green book, which one?
Oh, the one from
Libya?
The one from North Korea.
Oh, the North Korea's red book, yeah.
The little red book
Yes.
from the North Koreans.
The Juice system.
Yeah, that's right.
Juice system.
That's the Juice. You read that book too?
I went to North Korea, so I had no other choice but to read that book. I went to North Korea in 1989.
You met which one? Kim Il-sung?
Kim Il-sung.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So all these were some of the literature. The little red book was from Libya.
Yeah. So people like just not me alone. It was Erickson Romijn, Irving Knight, Ammonia, I think, also went. It was about 10 of us, 10 young people.
Have you read his book, Chains of Chain?
No.
Rosie's
Oh, the one of Rosie.
Chains of Chain.
Early o'clock.
I have one copy that survived, and Sean has it. So Sean has to give
Chains of Chain. Very
because
interesting.
my daughter
book.
asked me for it recently.
Very, very interesting book. I read that book as well.
I mean,
because during these times of students going to high school, colleges, you had to read this Lennox Max's Chains of Change, the Little Red Book, whatever you could find your hands on. But during that time, I must tell you that the Labour Party was also very much concerned about certain aspects of the Labour Party, about that revolutionary ideologies. So Eugenia Charles was not trusting it. So many of these guys had their homes, searched for this type of literature. But many of the officers later on told me that they kept those books to read. I won't call me.
Desmond Blanchard, I hope that you are listening. I don't know why I would be laughing.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah,
but Tiyani, your dad did well. He did well for Dominica, he did well for the region, and he did well for the world.
Yeah.
Trying to bring peace to the world. And it's amazing, that the way that he looked at things differently from many of us. But one of the good things, though, that he made mention of, Tiyani, on the 19th of December, the year 2000, when he made that pronouncement, 19th of January 2000, when he made that pronouncement in the campaign, that Sunday in Vickers, and he said, I was about to do one term. Yes. I would only do one term and give Roosevelt Skerrit that mantle. So tell me, Behanzin, what do you see in Roosevelt Skerrit that
But before he goes there, I will just tell, and Tiyani will continue. I was with Julian Giraud when Rosie came. We were there.
In the White House?
In his White House,
in
right?
the White House on
Cornwall Street.
Street.
Yeah. So Rosie came and he said, "Why, I found that fella, So they were there, listening to them. The fella I saw, and he'll be the next Prime Minister. So fellas asked, who is that fella Mr. talking about now? they say Roosevelt scared. I say Roosevelt scared. Who's Mr. now? So they say, yeah, man, a young fella, man, from Vickers. Rosie telling them that man will be the future prime minister, you know. Long before. Because he had chosen Roosevelt Skerritt and Vince Henderson, the man talking about Roosevelt Skerritt to be the next prime minister. And you have senior members in the party. I mean, Rosie saw it. Nobody saw that.
Similarities, Behanzin?
Well, first of all, I mean, I met Roosevelt Skerritt, who would later become the prime minister, in Taiwan during Rosie's first state visit. And I can see there that there was a certain amount of attention Rosie had with him for sure. They had a certain connection. But whatever discussion was taking place, he would be probably the strongest voice in whatever it was that was being discussed. So you can see that he wasn't just an ordinary, like the rest of most of the others that were there. I'm not saying that he was ordinary, but it's just that there was a certain amount of attention on him for sure. And I saw the way he carried on himself. He certainly behaved honorably. And I saw him in all guises. I mean, from the different aspects of the trip where we had official business, and also when we chilled and went out, and nightlife and that sort of thing. I saw him in those different guises. I think similarities would be probably the natural connection, I think, that the Honorable Prime Minister has with people. That is something that Rosie has. I think he has that. They're two different people, because Rosie was a very special person. I don't see among, say, the opposition forces the kind of connection that he has with people. That's something that they would need to, they really cannot, equal or come close to that. I also see the charitable parts, the giving, the various concern about people, and those things you see. He probably has more layers between himself and the people. Rosie was a very difficult person. I mean, can you imagine Rosie's at his home in Portsmouth? He jumps out of the window, leaves the police officer guarding the front of the house, and he escapes on a vehicle, makes some arrangements to end up putting a sensei and having a good time. I just cannot see anybody else doing that. Rosie then, I think, at one point stops the state car bringing him wherever they were bringing him, puts somebody's dash, whatever it is, in the back of a state car and gives him a lift. Those kind of things are just Rosie. But when you saw some of the interactions the current Prime Minister have done by, his ability to have negotiated the release of those two young people from Cuba and those things, there are lots of things about him that ingratiates and make people feel close to him. I think he's probably far more able if he has less of that in between him and the people. And that is probably one thing I see that an area that maybe they could, especially in a time like this, try and remove some of that sometimes. He used to move around a lot more by himself, and that he should go back to doing that and making sure he still has a full connection. Maybe prepare the party, because the thing about the Labour Party is that a lot of people who would have trepidation about the fact that it's changing, but then again, it must change. Everything changes. He cannot be expected to be Rosie or Pierre. He's his own person and has been very successful. But I think if he wasn't the person that was chosen, I think the party would have been in opposition for years. So the party did the right thing to choose him to lead at the time that they chose him. Otherwise, they would have been in opposition. So nobody knows what would have happened in the country if that was the case. So I think those two things there. Some of the best provisions that the country does, I keep saying, the Yes You Care program that gives elderly people a certain dignity. That is something I attach to the Prime Minister, current Prime Minister, in the way that it is delivered and the fact that it exists. Some of the issues of direct assistance to people, that's Rosie. Rosie used to leave Portsmouth and use about 5, checkbooks by the time he gets to Roseau, just writing check. Everybody has something to say to him, and he would just write a check and just give it to them, and that's what he was doing. And in his office, it was almost impossible to run the office properly because people would be waiting outside, and every once in a while he'd go outside and just give certain things out, and then go back into his office, wait for another crowd comes up, and that's what he was doing because there was no real. He didn't want anybody to stop him from being with people. So I see those things are similarities, and they're huge. Although they are small, they are huge. In this kind of politics here in the Caribbean, in Dominica, you need somebody with a natural ability to communicate with people. And those people will always do better than those who cannot. And that's just the fact. And people say, oh, what are you talking about? And so on. But that's exactly what it is. If it is not him, I cannot see the party would have been able to not find itself in opposition.
Let me ask you a very tough question. What caused you to go out of grace once upon a time?
Well, the thing is that I came here as a minister of justice in a sense, and I was basically a politician. I was not a politician, but I was being expected to be a politician. But what the funny thing was that I think most people expected that if I started off as a magistrate, people would maybe dislike me and so on. That didn't happen. But a lot of what I said, if it's something that supports the government, that supports the opposition and not the government, people would assume that is it's something against the government. And I simply said what I had to say whenever I had to say it, or whenever I felt I had to say whatever I had to say. But at the same time, I felt sometimes that certain things, central to my concern is the people. So anything I said, or that may not have been within the contemplation of the party or the government, may have appeared to be negative. But for me, I did it on behalf of the people. I come to recognize that I could be far more effective if I am able to see the options. I don't think any opposition force was going to emerge to form any government here. I myself ended up putting together an independent team of people who I find myself found very undisciplined, very difficult to work with, and I couldn't have seen if we had accidentally got the blessing of the people to have come to power. I think it would have been an unmitigated disaster. I think it made more sense for me to work intelligently from inside the party to return to the party. I don't think that anyone in the opposition forces made me feel comfortable or was interested in anything I had to really say. They were simply trying to make mileage from anything I could say that might affect the government or affect the Labour Party. That's what it was. But I think for me, Mike and Rosie's equitable sweat in the Labour Party meant I had only one option, that is to return to the party and work from inside. I said, because remember, there had been a long period of time where there was no party convention. So I felt at the eve when there was such a convention, I woke that early morning, putting everything into perspective, and I decided by about 5:30 that, you know what, I was going to make an announcement via social media. And then I spoke to somebody outside the country who I normally speak and get advice from sometimes. I spoke to one other person here, and I indicated to them that I was feeling a certain way. And within about 40 minutes of thinking about it, thinking over, I then made my mind that I was going to join the party, support the party, and make my way back to a party that I knew well because of the fact that, we're looking at, Rosie, Mike, that history. I mean, there were times when I had to carry campaign material in my suitcase once they called election. I carried campaign material for the Honorable Prime Minister. I carried campaign material for a lot of candidates and for Rosie himself. I could not sensibly have any kind of input in the political process in the country if I remain screaming and shouting from outside without any direction, without any purpose. And I felt that I would be more at home. I receive a number of dishonorable behavior and conduct from the other side. I have been in rooms where they have planned meetings and planned not to include me or to use my voice to raise consent in the country, but not necessarily give any kind of genuine interest in what I had to say. I have been welcomed by the Labour Party back. I took a lot of blows. I took blows from everybody after I came and spoke on the 10th of November. And some of it is unjustified, but you know what? I have received a lot of support from Labour members. So I felt more at home. And I think perhaps I should have taken that journey a lot sooner than I did. But then things happen when they're supposed to happen. You understand? So I wouldn't say it was disconsent. I raised things when I had to raise it. But I still think that the party has a lot of changes to go through, and I could be part of that process. I invite people back to the party so we can fix whatever about the party we don't like or we would like to see something else. Is it the selection committees? Is it the type of parlors that we use? Is it the functions? Is it some of the focus that we have to do? So I feel like I'm here to work. I'm not here to pick up any benefit. People say, oh, were you promised something? Were you paid? The circumstance of my return to the party and my arrival at the party, it would have been impossible for me to be paid. It's just nonsense. It's delusional for anybody to even think that. But for me, the importance was to come back in a place where I felt my father's sweat equity, my uncle's sweat equity, the general principles, the egalitarian principles that I'm interested in, is in the Labour Party. That's where it is.
Let's take a telephone call and see what that person has to say. Good evening to you, caller.
Good evening, Fireman Touching Base. Good evening, Mr. Joseph, Mr. Brain, and good evening to your guests.
Good evening. Good evening.
Now, I listened for a long this way and I whole heap of things, but I have to ask two little questions a little bit. Now, I hear past lawyer say that, or a lawyer, present lawyer say that, I don't know what it is because he was coming up. I hear a lawyer say that it's because he couldn't find a job that, I don't know the lawyer, Mr. Douglas I'm speaking to right now. Because he couldn't find a job now, he joined the Labour family. And I will say something that's so important. There are two things to say. Making noise and the origin area. And I love what you say because you was around that same noise. So I hope the people listen to what you're saying now. Making noise that the origin area. Organize and centralize. Up and running. Fireman running, bless up and listen and give thanks for life. And I'd love to see Rosie Douglas, national hero of River Nika, this time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm not looking for any job. I'm an attorney. I practice in 4 jurisdictions in the country. I have the dubious title of probably the highest wins of murder trials at the moment, something you don't really get because it's the judges that decide whether you're doing these cases. At the moment, I am on a good streak. I have a lot of focus and interest, but central to all of that is my service to the country. I came here to serve, and I have served well. I believe. I think I was effective on the bench. I brought peace to certain communities. I was able to work constructively with the police when necessary, and some of what I have been able to achieve, I have done so by listening to the people. So it wasn't something I basically sat and I had some kind of crazy delusional idea, and it's something I thought about well. In fact, as early as Well, I won't give a year, but I had a discussion with somebody outside, and that person said, "You know what? I would like you to return to your father's home, your father's political base. I will call the Prime Minister and speak to the Prime Minister and tell him what I think." That was years ago, and that very person was the same person that made arrangements when we get to that impasse. Hey, I don't think the Prime Minister was aware at all that morning I called. I never spoke to the Prime Minister directly. Information was sent to me and an invitation was extended to me. Instead of making a comment on social media, that I was invited to deliver whatever I had to say at the conference. And remember,
That's all that thought.
but not before you hold that thought.
Okay.
Can you imagine?
Callers, hold on, caller.
Can you imagine somebody's giving you access to say whatever you wish to say? They don't have no idea what you're going to say. Just think about it. And that's what happened. And when I came there, I felt the force of the Labour membership and the love that the people had for Rosie. Not me, but Rosie. The love for Rosie is what carried me through the 10th of November to make the statement that I made. And I made allegiance. I said I will follow any principle that the party membership choose, and I will give my support and my allegiance to whatever leader that the membership chose. And I maintain that. I've been very disciplined. I've taken all my blows. And I don't have any time for noise and foolishness. I think the best option is the option now. Whatever issue that we have inside, we'll fix it inside by speaking to the right portions of our party that we need to fix. But I'm a Labourite. I'm a card-carrying member of the party, and I'm here to serve the party and to serve the people who supports the party.
Let's go to the telephone. Good evening to you, caller. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, good evening. What a marathon spell there by Tiyani. Yes, I think Rosie Douglas was a very great leader, great man, and I believe maybe a monument or maybe a day should be set aside like Martin Luther King for Rosie Douglas, who did tremendously well for humanity. This was a great man, and the question is, in 2000, I was in Sydney, at the Olympics as the chef de mission for Dominica, and welcome Rosie Douglas, the Honorable Rosie Douglas, to the Olympic Stadium. And that man, when he shook my hand, I was in pain. That man was strong and well. And then 14 days later, coming down from Puerto Rico on the same flight with him, he coughed from Puerto Rico right to Dominica. I remember when the plane landed, and I said, "Comrade, I'm going to make an announcement so that you can come out from the plane first." And he said, no, I want to be the last man to leave the plane, And, the next morning early when I heard of the death of Rosie Douglas, man, that was really a sad day, in the history of Dominica. But really, I want to say, hold up strong, Tiyani. You have to do what you have to do. And certainly, when you can equate Rosie like somebody like Mandela or even, Luther King himself. But he's a great man that should be remembered. Something should be in place, to focus on especially on that day, the 1st of October, do a monument, do something where people can, come back and look at the history and speak about it. So I'm looking forward to that. I think this week you have a lecture on Thursday.
Yeah, the 9th of October, which is Thursday.
Yes. Okay, well, thanks. And hold strong, man,
Thank you.
I always love this man, he was a great leader.
Blessed love to you. Blessed love to you. Let me just say though. I of all what has been said, you see this 25th anniversary. From inside, from my position inside the party, I have access to people that I perhaps may not have had access to. Now I do. My approach now is a completely different approach. I've called for a meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister. He agreed to the meeting very quickly. That same day I met with him. I told him what my plans were. He supported all of it. No hesitation. I have made very, very regards. I said I asked for an annual event. They've accepted that. The Prime Minister actually made an announcement already. I've asked for a posthumous award. I've asked that the Dominican government write to the Canadian government requesting an exoneration for Rosie because the school have apologized for the failures and so on. I have myself have looked in some of the secret information that the Canadian government collected. Clearly, Rosie was not involved in any criminal activity, and that there were agent provocateurs used to cause the fire and everything else that took place. Rosie has always been a peacemaker. Rosie has been somebody that we in this country should be proud of. And all of which I have requested have been delivered.
You figure it's time for a bus for him?
West, I think there was actually an early bus done, you know. The thing is that the rendition is always an issue as to whether or not people feel. So some people felt, well, it's not him, and maybe it could be, maybe some of the features could be changed. It's always very difficult to do that. Always very, very difficult. People said, oh, there was nothing done. That's not true. I have attended meetings where we have looked at several different options. I want to thank the government. I want to thank the Labour Party for this. I mean, the Prime Minister said he will put somebody to assist me. They have done that. Almost all of it they have done. And I thank them for that. I thank the suggestion that the event will be an annual event. I cannot ask for any more.
Let's go to the telephone quickly. Good evening to you, caller. Thanks for holding on.
I just want to commend, the on the statement that he made, concerning his return to the Labour Party. And that is what I always say, to persons who have made so many sacrifices in the past. And sometimes it really hurts my heart to see persons whom we had worked along with, over the years in the early struggles. And today, for simple or self-centered, reasons, have made it a personal scene, a personal dislike, instead of looking at the greater picture. And I want to commend you, sir, because as I said, that the Labour Party is more than just a party. It's an institution. It's an institution. And I am not a Labourite. I am not a supporter of the Labour Party. I've always made it clear that I am the Labour Party. Irrespective of what differences may exist, it is more than a DNA when it comes to my relationship and I being the Labour Party. Because when you look at the entire overall picture, the party that has actually stood for the people, for the Dominican people, all classes, you can call people bourgeois if you want, all of us on the same scale in Dominica. But when you talk of the little man, when you talk of the people who are really in need of a party to stand for themselves, for their growth, for their education, for their general development, there is no other party that have existed in Dominica that have done that. And the track record of the Labour Party speaks volume. It speaks volume of a party that has raised the standard and quality of life of the people of the country. And if people feel they want to distance themselves, would it first, of course, we need all on board. We need all on board to ensure that I don't have to be, I'm 30 years old now, and I want to live up to 100. You understand me? So I don't want when I'm the age at 100, I still have to be fighting for a Labour Party to retain political office in the country. And I believe there are others like you. What I want you to do, my dear brother, is encourage and campaign, among the sectors and bring across the same idea that you had across to them, that we can ensure that we have a party when we say we shall not be moved, that this Labour Party and the future existing Labour Party will never be moved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit of the time we have remaining in reference to Thursday's discussion.
Yes.
It's going to take a form, as you said, of a discussion, but there are going to be people who will be giving some solidarity messages.
Yes, we expect a small amount of speakers, but we expect somebody from the Labour Party. Most likely it will be the the leader of the party, will speak on behalf of the Labour Party in relation to Rosie's contribution. Also, the government person will speak. Mr. Lloyd Pascal will speak. The Prime Minister, we are hoping, will be able to speak, because it wouldn't be the same without his contribution. And then the actual lecture itself, delivered by the Honourable Comrade Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, and then closing. That's what we will have. And hopefully every year, as we said.
I would have liked to hear Margaret's voice. Maybe, is it Margaret Roy? Margaret's, I would like to hear, she was a teacher.
Margaret Jules Roy, she's now in the United States. She used to be an education officer.
We have Zoom those days.
So she can speak from the United States.
I would have liked to hear Ammonia Paul.
Ammonia Paul, okay.
These people, Nathan Barnes.
Yes, Nathan would be welcome for sure.
Yeah, these people.
Yeah, and we have a young person that just represents what Rosie was about, which is what somebody that Rosie had inspired, a very young person who still remains in the party. I mean, I'm going to make sure she's there to say a few words herself.
I would have liked to hear the voice of Ian Douglas, ambassador.
I know, and Ian is not here. Well, as I told you, there is when the Prime Minister arrives from St. Vincent, he would lay 3 wreaths at the graveside in Hampstead, and I wanted Ian to hand him the wreath that will be placed on his father's grave, as well as we will certainly do that for Rosie. But also, Sister Pat was very crucial and important delivery in terms of education in St. Vincent. So we're hoping somebody from the church, we expected it would have been the bishop, but the bishop is out. So hopefully somebody from the church will arrange to hand the wreath over to Mr. Ralph Gonzalez, so he can lay it on Sister Pat's graves.
Maybe Monsignor Thomas, who was very close, I know, to Rosie. They will do that. I don't know, just guess.
I think the Catholic will decide who's going to be.
Yes,
but that would be interesting. It's a small thing, because I know it's emotional for Mr. Gonzalez because of the connections he have with these people there, and Mike and Rosie from long time, from Montreal, from North America, and a lifelong kind of a connection. So we don't know what it is. I mean, I remember how hard it was for me to wake that morning and to inform and track my brothers down and inform them that he had passed. I know how hard it was when we met the body in town, traveled to Grand Bay, and all of that goes on here, because remember we are a family. Have to deal with that big emotional loss. Our lives have never been the same, and at the same time, we're required by the public to at least engage them. So we have to maybe put aside some of our emotion and then deal with the public. I remember when I got to St. Joseph in the cortege, and the school children threw flowers on the hearse, and that just broke me. I mean, I had to stop. I was completely emotionally unresponsive, when I experienced that. I remember, continuing on the journey until we get to Portsmouth, and all of that. That was I don't even remember driving that far. I don't remember how I made it. I don't know how I got there. And I remember the day of the funeral. I remember all of those things. It was hard. It was very, very hard. And although I had told him it was going to happen, I still myself was not ready for it.
I don't think I should end tonight without putting the correlation between Rosie Douglas and my good friend Pierre Charles.
Yes.
They were good buddies. They worked with each other. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, Rosie always said, if it wasn't for Portsmouth, and that he was from Portsmouth, he would have run in Grand Bay. And part of that was because of people like Pierre Charles. They walked from Grand Bay to the airport to meet Rosie. And I myself, I remember a few months ago when Mr. Grell passed. I remember I called his family and I said, listen, I would be honored to be able to be an usher, to carry him from the church to the gravesite. I would be honored to do that because I knew how important he was to the Labour Party. I knew how important he was to the history of the party, the actual when there were two factions, all of that. He was a through and through supporter of the party, and I felt that I needed to be there with the family. It was just a few days after the 10th of November, and I made connection. I went there, and when I went there, I didn't really see the type of support I thought we should have had. We should have had buses coming in from different parts of the country to support this man because of what he had done, because of the importance of him, for the morale of the party. And I offered to carry the casket. I called on Mr. Pascal himself, Lloyd Pascal, and he joined me in the midsection of the casket, and we helped carry it right through. We stayed with the family and spoke to them and tried to comfort them, So the party need to be able to respond effectively when people like that and their family are in those situations. So I was happy to be part of that, but I can see that the family was probably disappointed because we didn't have the showing that we should have had when he passed. But he was a huge person in terms of what he lived and the type of life he lived and the type of contributions he made in relation to the party. So I think it was important for us to do that. I think the party needs to put in place mechanisms to bring people back in. Let them contribute and join the movement again, make the movement stronger. Let us fix all the little parts of it. Pick up the discontent. Pick up some of the issues that are being raised. Find a forum to address them, and then move on. We need to do that. So I'm certainly one of those people who are here to do that. I'm certainly here for service, as I've always been about public service. Anybody knows me, they know that from my days in Montreal, from my days in the U.S., from my days in the Caribbean, days in Dominica. It's about service. My profession is about service, the type of matters I deal with. So I just want to say that I am emotionally complete from my time, from my focus on this period here from my father. The first is always hard for us. It's very, very hard for myself, hard for my brothers, because we have to relive this nightmare every year. And what is good about it is that we can see that he had a massive impact with people in the Caribbean, massive impact with people in Africa. We meet people all the time that tell us that, and therefore it's comforting, But we here have to learn more about him because we can contribute. We in this little country here can contribute a lot to the development of other countries and systems and issues in the world. Doesn't matter how small we are, we can make a difference.
Yes, a good way of closing. Let's take that last caller quickly. Good evening to you, caller.
That's DBS.
That's DBS. You're live, yes.
Okay, good night. How are you doing? Everything okay?
Great, yeah.
Yeah, the festival is coming up heavy. Okay. So I just want to make a point. I want to make a point for our country, Dominica, the Prime Minister is listening. I think that they should see to that Dominica have their own boat coming to Guadeloupe and going back to Dominica, because right now people want to come home, and we have a problem with the express, with the ferry, because of they have not enough boats. I find it very.
Caller, I'm sorry, caller. At that time, that's not what we expect you to talk about. I'm sorry about that, but we are not here to talk about commercial matters. We are talking about an individual. So I'm really sorry that I had to cut you, but that's not what it is. So as we are closing, I just want to say a statement from the Prime Minister of Canada, Jacques Chirac, on Douglas' death. He said, Prime Minister Douglas was a man of great conviction who dedicated many years of his life involving improving relationships between people of all origin. His relentless pursuit of social justice and equality brought him to many foreign lands, including Canada, a country that he considered his second home. Since his election as Prime Minister of Dominica last January, he dedicated his talent to helping his country meeting the challenges of globalization using the numerous relationships he developed around the world to benefit the people of Dominica. His sudden pass is of great loss for his country and for his many friends. Join me in offering on behalf of all Canadians our sincere condolences to the family of Prime Minister Douglas and the people of Dominica. That was so sweet. Way back in 2000.
Wow, that was
Yes,
wonderful.
that was nice, yes.
Well, we come to towards the end.
Yes, your last words.
Well, very inspiring to hear that the family's putting together that lecture series, which I hope will not be the first, but it will continue, at least for annually. So I want to thank you, Mr. Tiyani Behanzin, for being here with us to express, and share the information with us about your father. And so we're looking forward again to meeting you. And we hope that we can get some extracts, at least from what you talked tonight, and from the lecture series.
Well, we thank you. I mean, on behalf of my family, my entire family, it's a very large family. We want to thank DBS Radio for allowing us to come and talk about the life of this very important man. And that hopefully there are messages that our people could look through to his life and emulate to make our country better, to allow us to contribute more, contribute effectively, and to make this country a place that young people can aspire to live and to build a life in. That's probably one of the most important things. So we thank you. And we thank the Labour Party, we thank the Honourable Prime Minister, and we thank all those who are contributing and assisting us in dealing and putting to us this memorial lecture.
Just want to say thank you very much, Behanzin, for coming. And someone just said, the last person on Facebook says, Cecil, the program was very inspiring. Thanks for remembering Rosie, a great Dominican. I just want to say to the viewers and to the listeners of DBS Radio, thank you very much for participating in such a program. Those of you all who made comments on Facebook, just want to say to you, thank you very much for your comments. And those of you all who looked both on Facebook and on YouTube, thank you for that. And those of you who listened and participated by your calls, I want to also say thank you. And tonight was very inspiring and very informative. And I'm sure that people who just born, as we could say, as we normally would say, just born, who did not see or touch Rosie Douglas, that tonight, for the words that they heard, that they would have felt that they knew him and maybe touched him and walked with him. And so, Behanzin, I really want to thank you so very much.
We want to make sure that we also extend an invitation to Nathan to say a few words as well on Thursday. So Nathan will be expecting you.
All right, so Nathan, you heard that. And DBS Radio for sure will be at that function to carry live to the listening audience and maybe to the viewing audience on Thursday at 6:30 it is.
6:30.
At the
State House Conference Room.
All right, the State House Conference Room, an appropriate place. We remember that he was at the State House, illiterate, and just want to say thank you so very much, Behanzin, and to all our listeners and our viewers. Just want to say thank you again. And let's continue doing what we do, that is to continue blessing our beautiful country by giving it service. Once again, have a good night, and God bless every one of us.
Blessed love.
November 2023. I am terrified by the sound of this explosion starve every day. Oh my God. Oh my God. We live life like miserable, hopeless, homeless, dreamless, jobless. And the sound of ambulances doesn't stop.
The diplomatic push to end the fighting is focused